So I'll begin with a story that maybe you heard, maybe you didn't hear, but it's not that known. My father heard it straight from the Rebbe. So of course tomorrow the Rebbe is the 80th anniversary of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin coming to America. And you already bored with what I said? Didn't even say anything. So was that year was, I believe, Chof Sivan was a Monday. The Rebbe, my father was in Yechidus by the Rebbe many times, but one I'm referring to, Tov Shel Lamed Aleph, 1971. My father had gone to Russia then, and it was not easy times in Russia for the Jews. So before he went, the Rebbe told him many different heros and directives, and the Rebbe said, you know how dear V'tayir the Russisch Eden Zayin Bamir, everybody speaks Yiddish here, understands Yiddish?
Mm-hmm. More or less.
More or less. I'll translate, okay.
It's in a little bit.
So the Vezdor V'tayir, how precious the Russian Jews are by me. So when you come back from Russia, make sure you right away notify Rabbi Chadakov. So he was the Rebbe's chief of staff, the main secretary. So you come in to see me as soon as you get back. So my father had a whole trip. It's a long story, the trip itself, which I'm not going to go into now. So when he got back, he right away called Rabbi Chadakov. It was the first phone call he made. And Rabbi Chadakov said, okay, I'll tell the Rebbe. And my father doesn't hear back from him. So it's already the night. So he called Rabbi Chadakov again. He says the Rebbe didn't respond. Didn't say anything. So a day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days passed. So my father didn't have any questions. The Rebbe will call him when he wants to, but still, the Rebbe did say, as soon as you get back, call me. Anyway, 3 days later, after my father returned from Russia, the Rabbi Chadakov calls my father and tells him, I think it was a Thursday if I recall, maybe not. And he tells the Rebbe wants to see you tonight. So the Rebbe's going to daven Ma'ariv at 9:30, and then he's going to, he has some work to do, and 11 o'clock you come. The Rebbe said these words, you have all night to speak. And my father didn't know if that meant literally. It ended up being literally. Yechidus went from 11 o'clock till 6 a.m. Maybe one of the longest Yechidus, 7 hours. Anyway, my father arrived, a little before 11, and 11 o'clock, right on the dot, he went in. And the Rebbe, let me tell you the beginning before the Rebbe spoke about the 3 days. So the Rebbe, my father brought with him a whole bunch of letters from the Russian Jews. Because remember, there was no mail, there's obviously no technology like we have today, but he couldn't even send a letter. Couldn't get on the phone. It was a prison. The Soviet Union was Iron Curtain, Kipshute. Could not get anything out. So anyone that came would bring letters from the Chassidim to the Rebbe. And they would write, dear father, dear Fete, Zayda. They didn't write Rebbe because of the danger involved, if the letters were opened or whatever reason. So my father had a good 200 letters probably. And he had packed them in a bag with rope, with a string that the Rebbe could easily open up. And he put the letters down on the table by the Rebbe. And the Rebbe, my father told me, the Rebbe lifted up one of the bags, one of the packages, and he slowly untied it, and literally, very gentle, literally the Rebbe was touching a child, holding a child. And the Rebbe he read one letter, and very slowly. The Rebbe generally read very quickly. It was very deliberate, very slowly. The Rebbe read one letter, another letter, and then the Rebbe started crying. And my father was very uncomfortable because he's standing there and the Rebbe's reading these letters like a Yechidus with these Russian Jews. So my father decided he's going to move his way out of the room. And when the Rebbe's ready for him, he'll come back. Anyway, he was about to get out of the room. He was walking slowly to the door, and the Rebbe made to him like this, you should stay. So he buried himself in a corner, and he said it was one of the most, it's like being a Kedesh Kedoshim. The Rebbe was crying, sometimes B'kol. because these are the Jews pouring out their hearts and souls to the Rebbe in the real way. They did not take their life for granted like we do. And around 10 minutes, this went around for 10 minutes. Obviously, the Rebbe didn't read all the letters, but he read a good 10 letters. And then he put down the letters. And then the Rebbe started like this. He said, Mistama wundersech. You're probably wondering why I told you as soon as you get back from Russia, you should come right immediately to see me. Because by me, the Russian Jews are very tired, very precious. And B'Peil, I didn't call you till 3 days later. So the Rebbe said, I also had the same wonder many years ago, and the Rebbe would call the Rebbetzin Musya. That's how he called her, Musya. He said, "When ich Musya, then you come in America," which would be the 80 years to this day. This was of Lamed Aleph, so obviously it was many years ago. When we came to America, and we got off the boat, and we were ready to go to 770 to see, the first thing they would go to see the Rebbe, Frierdiker Rebbe, Shver, the Rebbe called, the Shver. So I said to Musa, the Rebbe said to my father, I asked Musa, should I go to the mikveh first, or should I go into the Rebbe first, or the Shver? So Musa said, the Rebbe said, Musa gesagt, it's all in Yiddish. I'm just cutting straight to English, so I don't have to double the length of this Fabring. So the Musa said to me, by the time we'll get there, we'll see what happens. If the Tata roofed, my father calls us, we'll go to see him. If not, and the Rebbe smiled. He says, we got to 770 until the Shver Tunzgeruf, until he called us, we can gain the mikveh Tzemel. That's what the Rebbe said. It was 3 days. Frierdiker Rebbe did not call them in for 3 days. And the Rebbe said, it was always bothered me. I always wondered, why? We mamish, first of all, it's mamish the Rebbe's mishpacha. And Frierdiker Rebbe did everything Mercedes Nefesh to get them out of Europe. And it would seem like as soon as they would come, he'd want to see them. So the Rebbe said, I never heard an answer or explanation. The Rebbe said, I assume that the Shveri given a Gresa Balis Rakshus. He was very emotional, and it was probably, he wanted to wait a few days because of the emotions. That's how the Rebbe said. I mean, we know when the Frierdiker Rebbe heard bad news, I mean, this was good news, but when there was bad news, it had a very deep effect on the Frierdiker Rebbe's health. When he heard about those Gresa Chassidim that were killed by the Nazis. That's a separate story, but just bring it as an example. So the Rebbe did not say, that's why I didn't call you for 3 days, but my father understood, al derech zeh. I mean, again, the Rebbe didn't spell it out, so it could be the Rebbe didn't mean that, but whatever. So I just say it because, you don't have many stories where the Rebbe refers to coming to America. So I've told the story before. I heard it from my father directly. It was the whole long night was a yechidus that went for hours and hours. I mean, most of it has been mefursim already. It was that same yechidus that you may have heard the story at the end of the yechidus, which was around 6 o'clock in the morning. Since I'm already saying the beginning, I'll tell the end of the yechidus. So it was the dawn was starting to break. So you could see outside the window, it was starting to get light. The Rebbe stood up. My father said it was as if the night had never passed. The Rebbe was completely fresh, mamish, like you'd think after a long night. And they spoke about a lot of heavy things and challenging things, difficult things. And the Rebbe looked out the window and said to himself, but he said aloud, my father was able to hear it. He says, Anayatog. That's what the Rebbe said, Anayatog. I remember that because I was 14 years old then. And I remember my father came home. I was awake because I didn't know. I remember I waited in 770, but I didn't know when it was going to end the yechidus. Kapani, my father came home. That was the first thing he told me. He said the Rebbe just told me. The Rebbe just said Nayatog, which of course has many meanings. The most obvious meaning is that every day is new challenges and new opportunities, but also after a long night, and the Rebbe was talking about a lot of dark things with my father about the Russian Jews and the tzaras in the world at the time, etc. So that idea of always thinking positively. A component that was Tov Shalom at Aleph. So I want to share with you the following. The big question that we always have to ask, that I always ask at least, is, we grew up, all of you grew up in Chassidish homes, hopefully Chassidish yeshivas, Chassidish upbringing, and it's a given, that Rebbe's a simcha by a chassid, whether he thinks about it or not. But today, a lot of people ask questions, and not always everyone has the guts to ask it openly. But people ask me these questions, whether anonymously or not so anonymously. Why are we celebrating B'chlal Chof Sivan? The good that Rebbe was saved 80 years ago. Why is it Negei B'chlal today? It's a long time ago. Even if I completely am a kusha to the Rebbe, so what relevance does it have? The Rebbe was saved, very nice, and it's over. 80 years later. Those that have even more guts will ask the question, why B'chal Negei today having a Rebbe? I never met the Rebbe. My parents missed the Rebbe because they saw him, and they lived with him, and they were inspired by him. But many people today, the younger generation, I never saw the Rebbe B'Gashmis, and most of video and pictures and stories. So I hear these questions all the time. People ask this to me. They say, I understand. I get my parents love the Rebbe, and I have nothing against him, but by me, he's like Baal Shem Tov or the Alter Rebbe. I was born after all this. Just like I hear stories about the Alter Rebbe, I hear stories about the Rebbe. I'm not going to ask you by raising your hands what you feel about this matter, because most will not really be honest. And even though you all look like honest individuals, at least on the surface. But it's not, sometimes this question sounds very chutzpahdik and very, sacrilegious, as they say. You all know what sacrilegious is? It's not a form of religion. Sacrilegious means basically somewhat heretical, somewhat like chutzpah. You ask questions questions about how do you know God exists, how do you know the Torah is emes. So a question like that is, for many, was very disturbing. Why is the Rebbe relevant to us or not? But I find that not asking this question doesn't make things better. Much healthier to ask it and find an answer than just to push it under the carpet because we're Kabbalah Selniks and we do mitzvahs and Hashem Ulamadi. You just do it because you just accept it, even though, yes, they tell us Nasiv and Ishma, you just accept. But I would rather take the other approach and Taka explain. I could just tell you, when I was a bocher, and I was a naturally skeptic, I did ask questions. Those days, the questions were very different, and people had more derech in a way. But still, people had questions. And honestly, nobody wanted to hear these type of questions. If you asked questions like this, you were considered a Perek Ale. You know what a Perek Ale is? The opposite of a Kabbalah sale. And you were considered right away blacklisted. Some mashpiyim would immediately look at you like you're dangerous and you're persona non gratis and all that stuff. So I was not so stupid, so I realized that you can't ask these questions because they're right away going to label you. But I remember thinking to myself that the people who don't let you ask these questions is not because they have an answer. It's maybe they're afraid of these questions. So best is just to avoid it by not don't ask, and no see no hear policy. Bottom line. But I found that to be very disturbing to me. I have no problem that people are insecure and they don't have answers. Fine, because today there are a lot of Amaratzim in the world, but they were imposing it on us, and I know many of my own friends really were very disturbed and challenged because you couldn't ask a question. As soon as you asked a question, that was already possible. So some people were natural Kabbalah Selmics. I had in my class, like everyone has. Some of us were not. Some were in between. You know how it is in every group. There's three types. There's the goody guys that are always behaving. They follow orders. There's the other extreme that never follow orders. And then there's the middle that sometimes do and sometimes don't. You pretty much can categorize any class like that. I'm sure if we went around here, you all fall into one of those three categories. And that's how it is. Every teacher knows this, and this is the nature of, it's called the cross-section of society. Always has, not just by Jews, not just by Chassidim. Every social group has these three types: the conformists, the non-conformists, and the middle, that are in between somewhere. So, to me, it was always troublesome because I did not sense that the people that are adults, our leaders, so to speak, and our teachers had answers. It wasn't like they had answers and they didn't want to answer. I think they just avoided it. And it was very hard to find someone you could really identify with. I don't know if it's much better today, to be honest. I already have grandchildren, so I have children went through a school system. So maybe it's gotten a little better. I don't know. Maybe you can enlighten me if it's gotten better or not. But I know for one thing, it was not a good positive influence on me because it basically left me feeling Shtom and Vem today. There are people that just will, maybe that's where I developed my anti-establishment feelings, where I constantly question about so-called leadership. Someone's pushing me now to do a course on where are our leaders. And I'm struggling whether I should do it. I don't want to insult anyone. That's the problem. I don't want to expose anything. And you have to know how to say it in a diplomatic way. Because I know, when I was younger, I was more abrasive. Now I like to be more diplomatic. Not because I changed my policy, but because you don't have to necessarily offend people if you don't have to.
You see it work better. You see it work better.
Not Afghan. It's just more productive, to be honest. When you're younger, you have more chutzpah, you want to show people. Al kaponim, and I don't know, again, I'm not sure where you guys are at. Maybe what I'm saying to you is completely puzzle, and maybe now you blacklist me too. So be it. It won't be the first. But the point that, what were you saying?
What questions back then? What form were they compared to now?
Now people speak much more openly. People then would never say something that would be critical of the Rebbe, for example. Today people would. Not everybody, but some people would. Then there was like that, Then also, B'chlal, the whole language about the Rebbe was, there was no such thing as talking about the Rebbe in mortal terms. Like the concept, when I was a bocher in Tafshin Lamed Zayin, let's say, that someone should suggest that the Rebbe is not going to live forever, was not even spoken. It was just not even on the table. It was considered that Rebbe is going to live forever, and Mashiach will, that's it, and that's it. And no one spoke about it. What people thought, I can't tell you. I'll share the story later when I remember when the Rebbe had the heart attack in Tov Shalamet Ches. I was like my heyday. I was a 21-year-old bacher in 770. And it was for me, it was actually a big challenging thing that happened then. Because the Rebbe was a serious heart attack. It wasn't like a small little matter. But we'll talk about that later. The truth is, look, everyone always asks pre-Gimel Tammuz what was going on. Let me tell you, just be very blunt with you. The Yetzer Hara was not created after Gimel Tammuz. The Yetzer Hara's existed then, ganz fine. Even when the Rebbe was here, Begashmias, you're not much worse than the guys that were there than all of us. We all have our challenges. Everyone seems to think that when the Rebbe was here, Begashmias, like we didn't have Yetzer Haras and there were no Avedas and everything was going smooth and it wasn't exactly like that. Is that a shock to you?
Now you're getting black.
Huh?
Now you're getting black.
Okay, this is really bad stuff, right? There were things that obviously were going, but remember there was also, the Rebbe was taken for granted, to be very honest. When you have Giluyim around you, doesn't mean you appreciate it always. In many ways, there's more appreciation today than it was then because it was commented. It was like daily. It's like you go to Yerushalayim and, how long does the Kedusha stay? You end up eating falafel and shawarma and shopping, and then there's the case. We're insensitive to real lakus. So the Rebbe was here, yes, and the Rebbe was respected, obviously, but there was a bipinimis. It had its challenges. We'll talk about it. That's part of, part of the themes that we will address in this Fabrengen here. So Kaponim, going back to the main Shaila, which I think is the key to everything. You guys are, you said 26 years old. So you basically married Shana Rishena, that's what you are, most of you? First year? Shana Shnia. Some have children already?
Twins.
Huh? Twins also? Good. Triplets? Yeah, okay.
Working on it.
Working on it. How do you exactly do it? Is there a trick?
He figured out how to do twins.
He planned it?
That's it.
Okay, good double blessing. God bless you.
Tricks. You need the techniques to come thing out.
Okay, they have to go to. I can't bring about that. I don't know the. You have to go to other experts, fertility experts. Al Kaponim, so you're all basically beginning your early stages of your married lives. And I'm not sure what you do, whether you're in business, whether you're planning to go on shlichus, you're planning to go on Klei Kodesh. But everybody, I'm sure, has their own journey. And I think it behooves us, which means it's muchlich that we ask ourselves this question and not just take it for granted, even though I'm sure that some of you, if not all of you, but the Rebbe is the Rebbe. You just accept that from since your childhood. That's what you were taught, just like there's a Torah, there's a Rebbe, there's an Eibishter. There are certain things that are just givens. But I believe that when we learn Chassidus, that you just do things mitzvahs anoshim ulamoda. You all know what that means, right? We'll call it mechanical Judaism, robotic Judaism. It can have a lot of negative repercussions. The famous Gemara, everybody knows the Gemara. Even those that don't know Gemara, everyone knows this Gemara. Gamva pumachtat rachmanakaya. That the Ganav, before he goes to steal, he davens to Hashem that he should succeed. So of course there's big questions like insanity. The Eibishter said, "Lo signev." So mainly you want to ignore God, you ignore him. But you say, "I believe in God. I'm going to ask the policeman to help me steal," when he's telling me not to. So, hataka eno dem ever aved elim ken nichnas bei ruach shtus. So it's a ruach shtus. But nevertheless, how do you reconcile that? Most of us, as it says in Tanya, it's because we don't feel godliness. That's why you can do an aveda. But you can invite God into your home, into your life, and then say, I want you to help me sin. So Chassidus says, because Amunah is makif. That means it's not fake. The Ganef is not faking it when he's asking God. He does believe in God. But it hasn't permeated. It's not internal. It's not bepnimius. So b'melik, it can be a contradiction. Who doesn't have this contradiction? People say they believe in Hashem, and at the same moment, second later, they can die. They can do anything wrong that's against the Eibishter, because it's the in hini Hashem nitzav olav. Or boichin kleis v'lev. Taka says in Tanya, it's all nice. One of the Yud Beis Psukim, Amar Chazal. But bottom line, to feel it, to actually feel it, and just in case you're feeling bad, even the students of Rabbi Yechim ben Zakkai, and that was, we're talking about Zman Tanoim. Rabbi Yechim ben Zakkai on his deathbed, what did he say to his students? Halavai she'elechem meir shamayim k'meir basar v'dam. That you should fear God as much as you fear other people. We're talking about Tanoim here. The greatest of the great. Because the fact is, human beings you see, and you're going to be ashamed to do something in front of a human, and you're not going to be ashamed to do it in front of God, not because you don't believe in God, but because you don't feel it. It's not bepnimius. So yes, sometimes it can be a deterrent, yiras einish, or superstition, or you want to make a deal with God, you be good to me, I'll be good to you, type of thing. Or whatever people make all the deals, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, throughout the year. But bepnimius, so I'm not trying to suggest that that shouldn't bother us, but the fact is it doesn't really. So the same thing with the Rebbe. You could say easily, he's my Rebbe. You sing the Rebbe's Negunim. You hopefully makushet the Rebbe's heros and directives, both in learning and in Mitzrayim and Bepel and all the Rebbe's in Yonim. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's bepnimius. You could also be doing it what we call mechanically, like a cultural Judaism. I remember when I was teaching one of the schools here in high school, so the opening class I started, which some of the faculty didn't like I did this, but I did it anyway. I asked the students to write up a page or two. Why are you religious? So the very question itself was disturbing to some. What do you mean why I'm religious? Because God said so, and it's emes lamite. What do you mean? Of course that's why. But still, I wanted them to write it up. And I gave them the options. I said, you can write whatever you want. You can write that you believe it's emes lamite. You could say you're religious because your parents brought you up that way and no one ever asked you otherwise. And I remember I got all the papers from everybody. 98% basically wrote the same thing, which was, we don't even understand the question. So it's emes lamite, just like we breathe. Teiras are chayenu v'erechimenu, and that's it. There were a few that did not answer that, and they said most likely we're culturally religious, which means we grew up. Just like your parents teach you how to brush your teeth and how to do other things, they also taught us to say Meidani and Vashnegel and all the other things. So I don't really know is because I chose it or because it was taught to me. I'm not necessarily against it. So this is a question that's quite challenging. You know, if you're a Miftzayim and you met an intelligent person, and I have met such people who've asked me this question, they say, tell me something. You're a religious Jew because you chose, you went through a search, and you traveled the world and you looked at all the options, or like all of us. Some are culturally Muslims, some are Christians, some are Jewish. Now, as soon as you hear that, you say, Chaz v'shalom, lahavdil, you know, how could you compare? But the fact is, it's culture. I remember once walking Simchas Teda after Hakofis, later years, you know, after Hakofis, the second night, you know what in front of 770 it looks like, right? Like a war zone. You know, all the tables out there and the food and a bunch of people lying under benches. It's a scene. You ever seen it, or you were one of the people under the bench? Anyway, I was walking home. It's around 4:00 in the morning. In front of me are two black guys, African Americans. Are any of you Black Lives Matter people? Are you like that? Are you into that? No. BLM? You?
You said you became diplomatic.
I'm just making sure. I want to be politically correct in case somebody here. So I'm walking behind these two guys, and one of them says to the other, these Jews, they're just like animals. Look at them. So the other guy says, no, that's just their culture. It's a holiday to them. So then I remember a little while later, or before that, was the Labor Day parade, you know, when the blacks come out on Eastern Parkway and they have their party. So I remember two guys in 770 saying they're mamish like animals. So I said it's just their culture. So, you know what? For one person, is animals is a culture, and for the other person, it's just to point out that you know sometimes not everything that we are convinced of what we see, nevertheless means that we are. Like the Rebbe once told told Freden, he said not everything. I was a guy that said that we're not the Jews today should be modern, not like in the Dark Ages. The Middle Ages were called dark. So the Rebbe said not everything in the Middle Ages was dark, and not everything today is light. So in other words, you have to always take everything with a grain of salt. So I know I've been elaborating on the question, but I think it's vital for yourself and for your children and for your wives and for anyone you come in contact with to ask this question. You have to have a good answer. Because you may be a Kabbalah Selnik, and for you may be no problem, mitzvah sanoshim l'moda. You'll just be a cultural Lubavitcher, and you'll sing the Rebbe's Nigunim and have a picture of the Rebbe on the wall. But your children may not be that way. And maybe there's a voice inside of you that's also not that way. So it's actually a bracha to be able to ask this question. Now, a lot of people are menagdim to chassidus. I'm talking about scholars, Talmidei Chachamim. One of the things their taina was that you're opening up a what's it called? A can of worms. Because you're getting people to ask questions about philosophical questions that we're not supposed to ask. Like people that tainus on Meir Nevuchim. So Meir Nevuchim, for Nevuchim, yeah, okay. Someone who has already the questions, already a perplexed person, so the Rambam writes a sefer. But to go to Chadchila and read it, like the way they would explain it, that you could end up reading the question and then falling asleep and never hearing the answer. So instead of helping, it actually makes more problems. So those that said, clearly, this is part of the time of the Gra and others. Primis HaTeira is for Yechidis Gula. But to go open it up for everybody, you're opening up a can where people will just hear questions, start talking about the Eibishter, and they may not be ready, and they're going to hear questions, and it's going to make more sveikas than Amunah. So in other words, Amunah Pshutis is based on, you don't have to analyze everything. And they quote all the Mamar Chazal, that we shouldn't go into Malafonim and Malaocher, and the different Lashenis, that in L'cha Esek Ben Estadis. There's a lot of Lashenis that are proofs, Ki'ilu, that why are you crawling in places? Start talking about things higher, why God does things, etc. Can put in many more questions. But the Rabbeim did not go with that approach at all. And the Beferish did enter there, and they encouraged Chassidim to learn Chassidus and understand Chassidus and to ask questions. Not Chaz v'Shalom because they wanted to be made as fakers, but because they felt, for the main reasons, that number one, that we're living in a time now that we're no longer in a little shtetl where everything is so pure. There's going to be questions anyway, so you better address them l'chatchila. And also that Aved has to be more primistic today. You can't just rely on Kabbalah sale. This is why Chassidus Chabad is Chabad. Even the friends of the Alter Rebbe, colleagues, had disagreed with the Alter Rebbe's approach. They say you're turning it back into a whole philosophy. The Baal Shem Tov was teaching Emunah Pshuta. Why are you bringing back Chabad into Gansa Haskola and all that? I'm not going to go into all the explanations, but clearly it's much healthier today to be able to ask these questions and find the answer rather than to avoid it. And I can tell you right now, the more you are able to address it within yourself, not only be better for you, but everyone you come in contact with. So I'd love to hear your own thoughts on this, but I'll share mine. So the big question is, why do we need a Rebbe? It's actually the question of Keirach in this Parsha. Madua Tisnasu, he says to Moshe, who do we need a Rebbe for? What do we need leaders for? Call the Eidik Deshim him. Everybody's holy. So what do we need a Rebbe for? And it's interesting, Gimel Tammuz that happened 27 years ago, coming up, was Mitzvah Shabbos Keirach. So it's an interesting Keirach who was Mekatrig and asked the question, why do you need a Rebbe? Gimel Tammuz actually became a question for many people. You see, we're out without a Rebbe right now, the Gashmis at least, and can we exist without a Rebbe? It was never thought possible. Before Gimel Tammuz, you asked any Chassid, no, it's impossible. There was never a hefsek since the Baal Shem Tov to the Rebbe. There was always a Rebbe, and we always said without a Rebbe you can't be complete in this world. So good. So some people try to find all kinds of answers, and they try to force it with this medrash and that medrash, and call me Yanim. But that's definitely a good question. I personally don't need an answer, because not every question you have an answer. To me, Gimel Tammuz is more of a question than an answer, to be honest. Just like I don't know why the Holocaust happened. I don't know why the Eibishter decided that there should be a Gimel Tammuz. So we don't have to be afraid of questions. But still the question remains on a personal level, do we need a Rebbe or not? Do you need a Rebbe? You never saw the Rebbe. Let's put it that way. You grew up that they told you needed a Rebbe, but you actually need one. Now I'm sure some of you have good answers. I'm sure you learned Chassidus, and I'm sure Mashpiyim that talked about it. But you have an answer in your own heart that you really feel comfortable with, not just the party line. You know what party line is, right? That people just say. And that extends to essentially the same, the Chof Sivan. Because if you don't have an answer to the question of a Rebbe, you're definitely not going to have an answer to why do we celebrate Chof Sivan. Because that's essentially when the Rebbe came to America. I'm happy to actually stop here. If anybody wants to weigh in, to hear your Chachmas is also not bad. I'm not going to slug it up. Just interesting if anybody wants to. If you don't want to, it's fine too. I have what to say. But if anybody wants to say something, I would be very eager to hear. Anybody?
Shy crowd.
Huh?
It's a shy crowd.
No, people may not want to share their, you turn it to group therapy. You want to turn it to group therapy? L'chaim. No. I have to. I'm not going to leave this question hanging. Trust me. I cannot do that. Of course. Okay, so no one's speaking up. Fine. Weiter. It's all right. It's not a shock. I understand. We have to break the ice a little more. Yeah. But I'll leave you with this before I respond. When you will be asked this question one day, whether you're a Miftzayim or someone asks you this, I hope you have a good answer. Because it wouldn't look very good if you don't. So.
Yeah, but you just said that it's okay to leave it with a question.
I don't think this you can leave with a question. If you leave this with a question, it's a big problem. Why Gimel Tammuz happened, or why Chavzai, or why the Holocaust happened. But if you don't have an answer why you need a Rebbe, then basically means that maybe you don't. I don't think you can leave that without an answer. No, I would not equate the two. Why tragedies happen, that, we don't know God's mysterious ways. But Okay, so I'll tell you my thoughts on this, if I may. The question everybody understands, right? Yeah. And we'll get back to Chof Ches Sivan shortly. So without mentioning names, I was invited to speak. A bunch of young Lubavitchers who were just finishing school, yeshiva. And it was one group was men, and a second time I spoke for women. Basically graduating, either Hol Teda, or Lubavitch Yeshiva, or Beisivka. And the question they asked me to address is, why should we not go to college? They know that Rebbe was against it, but still, some felt for parnosa purposes, or they're not going to be a shliach anyway, or other reasons. Why not? Why can't they continue to go to college? So I want to share with you what I told them. Now, obviously, you could just say Kabbalah sale. The Rebbe said no. No, that's it. Don't ask questions. But they were asking. They wanted to know. So I asked them a question in return. I said, let me ask you. Before we talk about what the Rebbe wants, do you feel it's important to have a Rebbe in your life? So I can be very honest. Some raised their hands, yes. Some said, we don't know. We're not sure. Fine. They were honest, which was good. I wanted them to be honest. So I said, so those of you that believe that must have a Rebbe, why do you need a Rebbe? Tell me why you need a Rebbe. You could say before Gimel Tammuz or Chof Zayin Oder, there was no other option. People felt there was no way. Without the Rebbe, you don't have Hiras, you don't have the Kayach. But today we see it's now 20. I'm saying 27. When I spoke, this talk was a few years, 2 years ago, 25 years. You see that Chassidim are going on, and there's no Rebbe, Begashmias, which was once inconceivable. So I told them, here's my short answer. There are 8 billion people on this planet today. Then there were a little less. There are almost 8 billion. There's a website that keeps the population count. It's going up. They count the deaths and the births. But there's more births than deaths, so it's almost 8 billion people. How many people on this earth know why they're here? What mission they were given to come to this world? The answer is very, very low percentage. If someone said that 1% no, I'd be shocked. I think it's even less than that. Some people don't even think there is a purpose to life. That's number one. Modern science today, especially in the Western world, questions maybe everything is just one big accident and there's no purpose altogether. Those that at least I say maybe there is purpose don't necessarily can articulate, like, in business 101, a business needs to have a mission statement. You can't have a business without a mission statement. It's just impossible. So just to give an example, not that you came here to hear me talk about Google's mission statement, but Google's mission statement is to organize all the information of the world and make it readily accessible. So they have 90,000 employees or more. They make billions of dollars a year. It's all driven by that one line. That's a real mission statement. It's not vague. It's not what any other company is doing quite like that. To make all the information accessible, which means their search engines have to be very top-notch, that people find results. Because you stop finding the results that you're looking for, you're going to stop using Google. So the mission defines the purpose of the organization. And whatever they do is to fulfill that purpose. But if you ask somebody on a personal level, what's your mission statement? Most people will look at you like, and I've tried this. Oh, I didn't even think of it. Do I have a mission statement? Yeah, I want to be happy. Yeah, but that's not a mission statement. It's a nice thing to be happy. Google's mission statement is not to be happy. It's also a mission statement is also not to make money. No, that's not a mission. A mission has to be something specific that you serve the need of people. So most people don't even know of this concept. This is what I was telling them. I said, so you know why you need a Rebbe? Because the Rebbe was sent by the Eibishter to this world to tell us what's the mission of our lives. I would think that's a pretty big thing. Because it's hard to figure out on your own. Because we live in this world and we're basically driven by survival. We eat, we sleep, we drink. We take care of our physical needs. Even if you're a frum yid, so you also do Torah and mitzvahs. But to say the shlich is why you came to this world, So the Rebbe came in Tovshin Yud Aleph 7 years ago and said the mission statement of the Deir HaShvi is to bring the Geula, just like the Deir HaShvi of Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not now going to translating what that mission means, but that's what the Rebbe said, and that was the marching orders. It never changed. So here, you can go to college and become an interior designer, or an accountant, or a lawyer, or a doctor, or a computer programmer, whatever it may be. You may make a lot of money and give a lot of tzedakah. You could be a complete shemitah mitzvah, say Yerushalayim. No, of course, it's not just steer. Doesn't mean you go to college, right away you're not going to become through. I mean, there are challenges, but you could technically. But are you fulfilling the mission why your neshama came to this world? Lav dafka. You're doing good things. And I remember they looked at me, and I'm talking about, there's some of them were chassidish, more less chassidish, but they were all understood what I said. Said that's why we need a Rebbe. That's what a Rebbe does, among other things. And I remember one girl in one of the classes, one of the talks I gave, said to me, in front of everyone, she said, the first time I ever heard this in 12 years that I went to Beis Sifka. I said, you never heard this? I said, no, not quite like that. Yeah, I heard the words. We all know Deir HaShvi. We know, Shachanti B'Seichel. I wondered to myself, like, what was not said exactly? So maybe it was said just like a line. Like, we have a lot of punchlines, we have bumper stickers. Now, a person who feels that that's what the Rebbe is for them, giving you a sense of knowing why you're here, that means the whole purpose of your life, why your neshama came to this world, that mitzvah Hashem throughout your lifetime, to Me'ev Esrim Shana, or Chaim Nitzchim, that you could say, I fulfilled why I was sent to this world. That's in simple English. And I've said this also to secular people, interestingly, who don't even know what a Rebbe is. You know the reaction the secular people have? They say, you have a person in your life that told you what your mission in life is? I said, yeah. They were like, they were in awe. They said, I wish I had someone that told that to me. So the reason I'm putting it in such, let's call it simple language, is because I grew up like you grew up. We all heard the language of a Rebbe and Chassidus and Torah. But unless you can say it in simple terms, you don't own it. It's not bepnimius. That's why I'm specifically speaking in this type of, this language. Now, this doesn't change after Gimel Tammuz, because the Rebbe was not about a personality figure. I know some people were attached to the Rebbe as a cult personality. The Rebbe was charismatic and blue eyes and was very, very inspiring, which is all true. But that's what a Rebbe is. That was the guf. The Rebbe was his message. That the Rebbe had a compelling message that anyone listened to it and with the open ears said, wow, I want to be part of this. I'm not going to go into Chatosi ani maskir, all my sins in my life. But I can tell you as a teenager, I was not very interested in all of this. Not because I was particularly, because of Taivus or because of Yetzer Hara. I wasn't inspired. I grew up, just full disclosure, I was not molested, I wasn't abused, so I had none. Okay, today we have to say that. So I never had to go to therapy. I wasn't even disappointed because I was always a skeptic. So it's like, I had chaverim, I remember, that got very disappointed when one of the mashbiim became clear that he's Tama Schwanz, like that type of thing. I never had that because I never thought he wasn't, so it's like when you don't buy into something, you don't get disappointed. So I didn't have that problem. I had the problem the other way around. That I had some alamdim, some were very fine people, chassidish, warm people, but it was very, in my terms at least, it was very mediocre. You know that word? It was not inspiring. I was looking for something exciting. Wanted to excite me, Maybe it was my nefesh habamis that wanted. It doesn't matter, but that's who I was. And it was only when I really, it's a long story, but briefly, it's only when I began to understand through Chassidus that it's telling us why we're here in this world, and that you can go and change the world and create a revolution, a spiritual revolution. That's what spoke to me. And I'm not you necessarily. I'm just sharing. I'm sharing my own experience, and that's where I am today. I'm exactly the same 18-year-old, except with more years of experience, because that's what inspired me. So it wasn't. Yes, it was the Rebbe Begashmius, and I loved the Rebbe, and I missed the Rebbe, and so on. But I never was taken because of the Rebbe's personality. It was about his message. His message spoke to me. He could have been a great personality, but if his message didn't speak to me, so a lot of great charismatic leaders. And I don't mean to be dismissive of it. I'm just trying to point out. Now, I'm not saying everyone like that. I know people that are drawn to the Rebbe purely for the tziyur haguf of the Rebbe, and that's it. People talk about the Rebbe Mashiach, not Mashiach. So the skeptic in me, I always ask people, say, okay, so you feel the Rebbe is going to return as Mashiach. Is he going to be 20 years old? Is he going to be 80 years old? Is he going to be 50 years old? You never thought about it. I said, what happens if he doesn't look exactly the way you think he should look? No, you connected to his tziyur gashmi, or you connected to his neshama? So most people don't even think about that, because the Rebbe is, whatever I saw on a video, that's the Rebbe. Is that really what a Rebbe is? Is it what we see with our eyes? The Alter Rebbe writes in the famous Ageres HaKedesh, why Ishtakach Yatir Mebechayuhi. So people don't realize it. He says because a Chayev Tzaddik is Ruchnim, not Psorim. Our lives is Gashmizdika lives. I'm alive. You see me, a body, I eat, I drink. The Chayev Tzaddik, he says, is Chaim Ruchnim, Ava V'yira and Amunah. So B'mela, how does the guf change that? If there's a guf or no guf, the Chaim Ruchnim doesn't change. But everyone thinks that it's all about after Histalkus. The truth is, the Alter Rebbe is saying Chaim Ruchnim, even when the Rebbe is a neshama beguf, what you see with your eyes, that's the Rebbe. I remember as a bocher, I heard a story from Rab Shmuel Levittin, who's named after Reb Marash. He was born right after the Reb Marash's Histalkus. So his stories, he had stories he heard from Elter Chassidim. So he told the story the following. Tzemach Tzedek, as you know, the Tzemach Tzedek, and like the Rebbe, same name and the same Rebbetzin name, they were the only Rabbeim that survived the Rebbetzins. In all other Rabbeim, the Rebbetzins passed away after the Rabbeim. So in Tov Reish Chof Aleph, I believe it was, that the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushke, the Tzemach Tzedek's wife, she was nostalgic then. So the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek went into a very seclusion, if you wish. No Maimorim, there was no Yechidus, there was no... the Rebbe in a similar way in Tov Shem Ches after the Stalkus of the Rebbetzin. Can't say mamish like that, but there was also major changes. So it was really sad. The Chassidim were, they saw the Tzemach Tzedek in this state. And they tried everything. There's a letter from the Rebbe, actually, that the Chassidim went to the Tzemach Tzedek and said, we need you, you can't just... So Tzemach Tzedek said with a tear, Ein melech b'lei matranisa. A king is not a king without a queen. So the Chassidim right away quoted the Gemara that says that the Torah is like a matranis. So the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek said, yes, all's fine. But it's nicht... Anyway, several months passed. I don't know how much time, to be honest. I don't remember hearing. But one day the news comes, good Psura Teva. Tzemach Tzedek said, he's going to say a Maimer Chassidus. So you can imagine the greatest Simcha after whatever this is. So Chassidim gathered in Lubavitch. Rab Hillel Parasher, who passed away in Tov Reish Chof Daled, he was already older chassid, but he came from Parish, because a maimer of the Rebbe by him was, they say it was like a maimer was like literally a Gilead Lakus. So he came. It was hard for him to come, but he came, and the chassidim were waiting in the outer, I guess, zal for the Tzemach Tzedek to come out to say the maimer chassidus. So listen to this. The Tzemach Tzedek, however, didn't come out right away. 20 minutes, half hour passed, and then Rabbi Hillel was not feeling well. So he had to go out. On his way out of the zal, of the room, he hears two young chassidim, Jungelite, speaking about the Tzemach Tzedek, not the way you should speak. Like they were saying, the Rebbe, Morosh Cheder, or Atzvus, I don't know what word they use, something like that. I don't know if Rab Shmuel told us the right word, but something you don't say in a Rebbe. Rab Hillel suddenly had this surge of energy. He went over to these two Jungelite and said to them, no patch. He said to them, Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach. You know what that is? Tails. Okay, that's a Lashon Ikea. You could say worse than that, you know. And I'll put him Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach. Was meint it? Here I'll say in Yiddish, I'll translate it. Was meint it? A Rebbe is eigen anoz mit amoil. A Rebbe is a lekus. B'shas da helam af a lekus, da helam af a Rebbe. What do you think? That a Rebbe is eyes, nose, and a mouth? A Rebbe is godliness, Gettlichkeit, a lekus. And when there's a helam and a lekus, there's a helam on the Rebbe. So just think about those words. I mean, why the Chassidim didn't understand that themselves? These like whatever, they were megash in the Rebbe. So when you think like that, it's a whole different story. We're not talking about stam another human being. You're talking about elikus. Elikus, not elika. Remember what I said. Ish elikim. And as such, the Eibishter sent him to this world for a reason. And the main reason is, one of the main reasons, is to tell us what our shlichus is. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu was sent by the Eibishter to take the Yidden Mitzrayim and give them the Torah and tell them what their shlichus was. So, now if you know this in your heart, in your gut, through and through, this does not change Gimel Tammuz. Nothing changes this. Because the same Rebbe said it. It's printed, Maimorim and Sichos, hundreds and thousands of pages. And that lives on. Now I understand, we understand there's an Nisayon, especially those of us that saw the Rebbe and danced with the Rebbe on Simchas Torah, and then when heard the Rebbe blow shofar Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the whole Giluyim were tremendous. It was a big party, to be honest. And it wasn't difficult. You didn't have to do anything. You came Simchas Torah, the Rebbe led the whole 770, was on wheels, and no Aveda at all. All you got to do is dance and scream and yell. If you say a little L'chaim, you also have that going. It was mamish no necessary for any of it. So it was good times. But was it bepnimius? For some maybe, for most not, to be honest. So of course, if you're a chitzen and you lose chitzenius, you're going to have a big problem. But if you had the pnimius of why you're connected to the Rebbe, not just because the Rebbe is charismatic ringleader, that changes the whole picture. So I'll share with you my story that happened with me in Lamed Ches. And then we'll sing a niggin. We'll try to absorb the inyanim here. Go for it. We don't want anyone passing out from hunger here. Do you want ketchup? Do you want something to oh, you have, okay. Right now, I'm indulging through my speaking. We'll get to the food. So Tavshin Lamed Ches, as I mentioned to you, Na'ir Shmini Atzeres was the Rebbe had a serious heart attack. I was in my heyday. I was a bocher. I was a chazer. I was working the sichos. It was like a Eden mamish. I remember very vividly. I stood a few feet from the Rebbe when the Rebbe's face turned pale. I remember like today. I'm not going to go through the whole parsha, but those that knew, especially the insiders, knew that it was real sakonis nefashos. It wasn't a small heart attack. At 5 o'clock in the morning that night, the Rebbe had what they call in medicine a killer heart attack that could have killed the Rebbe. Should. Now I knew what was going on somewhat, and I had my let's put it this way, my Gimel Tammuz moment then. I remember I couldn't speak about it because no one spoke about the Rebbe in those terms, but in my heart I said to myself, the Rebbe is inspiring us, and I was one of those, to go out there and give our lives for Yiddishkeit, for Chassidus, Shlichus, whatever form it took. And we did it. We did it all with the simcha. But what happens if the God decides He's going to take the Rebbe? What happens to all of us? We're left hanging here. That's what I felt. And it wasn't a taina. It was just a question. I had a real sveikus about it. And there wasn't, as I said, anyone you could really speak to. My father, I was able to say something, so I said something. So he says, you're going to have to figure it out on your own. Which I didn't like at the time, but he was right. These questions you have to figure out on your own. No one's going to be able to help you. But then interesting thing happened. I was reading the story, famous story. Today we have more details, the Rishimis. Famous stories of Shmuel Munkus. So the full story goes like this. When they came to arrest the Alter Rebbe, which later would become for Yutas Kislev, so the Alter Rebbe had a hiding place in his apartment, where in case they were coming, he knew there was a sakana, so he would go hide there if the soldiers or anyone would come. So once in the middle of the night, there's a knock on the window. Yeah, the Alter Rebbe went to hide. They came in. They were coming to arrest the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbetzin was there. They asked her, where's the Alter Rebbe? I don't know. So the Shema says they slapped her and they knocked out a tooth. That's what it says. I was just telling the story as it's written. Anyway, they left, and Alter Rebbe came out of his hiding place, and a few minutes later, there's another knock. So they peek out the window, and who is it? Shmuel Munkus. He seemed to have been a Nachtfegel. That is. Because you always have to come at night. The first time he came to Alter Rebbe was at night. Seemed to be hanging around in the nights in the streets of So they let him in, and the Alter Rebbe says to him, "Du kommst echt bei Nacht." You also come at night, which means like you're also coming to frighten us. By night is they say the mazikim hang around by night. The dangerous elements. So the Shmuel Munkus says to the Alter Rebbe, "Ich hab nicht gewusst, dass beim Rebbe mit der Nacht." I didn't know by the Rebbe there's a night. Was the Rebbe something to be frightened of? And then the Alter Rebbe asked him his advice: should he allow himself to be arrested? And this is where he said the famous line that I'm sure all of you have heard. He said, "Mamonavshach, either or. If you're a Rebbe, nothing will happen to you. And if you're not, this they take out from the printed version, but I'll tell you what it says there. It's ... If not, you deserve a kailin cup. You deserve a bullet to your head for taking away the pleasure of Elam Hazard from so many chassidim." That's what Shmuel Munkus says to the Alter Rebbe. So first of all, it takes a shtickle chutzpah to say that, a bullet to your head. But Shmuel Munkus was a ish emes. He was telling the Alter Rebbe the way it is. If you're a Rebbe, then obviously there's no issue. If you're not a Rebbe, then you deserve the worst. What are you, fake? You misled a whole people. Like I said, we didn't have all the details. I told it to you with all the fuller details. This story had a tremendous impact on me, mamish life-changing impact. I remember saying to myself, you know what, grow up. You're in this army. It's not always going to be the way you like it. Yes, it was nice when there was a party and the Rebbe didn't have a heart attack. So you're only around for good times. And then if it's not so comfortable, you're out? Is that your life? I said, Mamonavshach. The Rebbe's a Rebbe, he's a Rebbe no matter what happens. And if he's not a Rebbe, get out. Now. When you're playing games. That's what I said to myself. And I'm not telling anybody that you have to say that to yourself. I'm just telling you my own story. And I made my choice. I said, you know what? Yeah, you got to grow up. You're committed, you're committed. If you're in this army, you're in. And I had enough reason why I wanted to be in. But I had my questions. And I still have many questions. But that doesn't take away. I'm in the army, and that's it. And it changed my life because I never looked back. Trust me, I still have questions. I still have skepticism. But I don't let it affect my decisions. So when Gimel Tammuz came, for me personally, Chof Zayin that I should say, then Gimel Tammuz. Yes, it was sad, of course. The Rebbe had a stroke, can't speak, he's not speaking, it's not... All that came with that. And then Gimel Tammuz, of course. So personally, it was very, like for all of us, it was difficult. But I didn't have a crisis in faith any longer. Because I had that moment, back in Lamed Ches. So I, in a way, was not affected personally. In other words, do I believe in the cause? I already had that question, and I had my answer. But again, I'm not taking away from the Gimel Tammuz effect on a personal note. Now, I'm only sharing this with you because I believe if Fabrein we should be open and honest. So I'm telling you really my own experience. And by no means I'm the same like you are. We all have a Yetzer Hara, we all have a Nefesh Habamis. In case you have a suffix, you just have to open up Tanya, and there's pretty strong proof that we're more or less a Rosh of a Tevle at best. Maybe some of you reached Beinani, maybe not, I don't know. I haven't met a Beinani yet. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean that you can't make choices in your life. So to me, I had my struggles with it, and I identify with the struggles. That's why people speak to me about it. I have Bochrim and others come to me, they talk about this very openly. Because I'm not afraid of the questions. I have the question, I understand the question, I could identify with it. But at the same time, there's also a response. It comes down to, grow up, make a choice. I will tell you, without numbers or names, I do believe that most of us grow up and are culturally from Eden. And culturally Chassidim, lav dafke by Aveda and through choice, you grow up with it. What do you think most people in this world do? They follow what they grew up with. If you look at statistics, 90% of people follow what their parents taught them. Then there are those that don't. And they have different reasons why. Sometimes it's due to trauma and emotional reasons. But that's why, because it's most comfortable. Why would you want to rock the boat? It's always comfortable to follow, what your families did. Now, is that a bad thing? It's not bad per se, but it also has a side to it that means that you're doing it more or less mechanically. It's mitzvah sanoshim elamoda. It's aveda premius, lav dafke. But Chassidus does demand that it should be premius. And I can tell you that Gimel Tammuz was that challenge for many, many. Again, without names, I've seen many people, Chassidus She'idin, and the premius of the connection to Rebbe was very strongly challenged by Gimel Tammuz. So they may go through the motions, but they don't necessarily have, it was nice, before Gimel Tammuz, it looked like they were big Mukusharim, lav dafka today. And you can't know from people's looks. I know people who look as Chassidus as it gets, and are not there. And I know people that don't look at all Chassidus, and are very much connected. So it's not always a Chassani as they could think. So I say this, we'll talk about Chof Sivan after we sing, that the Rebbe's relevance today is even more than it was 27 years ago and 30 years ago. First of all, there are many more challenges today. So if we ever need a direction of how you deal with life today, like what is our shlichus, what's our mission? And today there are many nisyanas that did not exist then, especially through technology. And Yod Inish Benafshe. Everybody knows the different challenges there are. So if anyone, we need direction much more than ever before. But it is a challenge, because when you don't have the Rebbe Begashmias, it's harder. You have to go more premiusdik. There's no other way. But I see Bochrim, and I'm sure many of you, or maybe all of you, that for some reason were able to connect to the Rebbe, even though they never saw the Rebbe, through the premius of the Rebbe and his matara, his ideology, if you wish, his teachings, his message. And of course, it's quite impressive when you see that, because it's only premius. And then there are many that the Chitzenius continues to be their main thing. I don't know how it lasts. To me, it wouldn't last for me, for sure not. But I guess some Chitzenium, it works. Like in any group, you have people who just follow because everybody's following. So l'chaim to the Rebbe, l'chaim to all of you. We have a unique challenge in our time, is to make it come alive through us. I'll speak more about it afterwards. L'chaim. Many. I don't know if you bargained for all of this. I hope you don't mind, but I'm being direct. Okay, good. I don't know. Some people don't like it. Yeah. I just want to make sure that I'm sitting near the boss. I heard from my shver, my father-in-law. His name was Heske Gansberg, Svir Gansberg. So he was one of the Menagnim, one of the members of Nechoyach. He used to start the Nigunim by the Fabrengens. Abiel would start the first Nigun, he would start all the other Nigunim. So he once told me about this Nigun we just sang. Oshelik and Nikolaeva's nigun. Sasha Nikolaeva had heard this tune actually at a wedding. At a wedding of just a bunch of poyers, peasants. It was what they call a volach. Like, a little like a klezmer singing a tune. And Sasha Nikolaeva took the nigun and turned it into the nigun we just sang. So I asked my shver, do you know the tune as it was before he converted it? She said, yeah. He heard it from people who heard from his Asher Nikolaever. So I asked him to sing it, and he sang it, and I'll sing for you how I heard it from him. And it's interesting because you could see how a chassid takes a seemingly simple jingle, if you wish, that doesn't sound at all has anything profound about it, and turns it into a nigun like this. So this is what my shver sang. He sang. This is the original song where Asher Nikolaever, before Asher Nikolaever changed the nigun. Ay 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 ay, ay 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 ay, ay 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 ay. Ay ay da ay 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 da ay 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 ay. That's what he heard. Now, exactly like that. Look what he did. So we go in this quick little beat. Like they played klezmer. We're playing by a wedding. Like a little song. Ay 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 ay. He made. Ay ay na na From what? From ay 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 ay. Would you be able to do that? Interesting, right? It's the same trua, but he added that whole dimension to it. And the whole song that I just sang quickly, if you compare it to the niggins, Mom is the same song, but he added a whole neshama to it. I thought it was quite fascinating, because in other words, you could have two people sing the same thing, and one for one it's just a prosted little niggle, song, melody, and another turns it into a whole experience.
Now we're in a full circle, because now when you see the gun and settles back.
I agree with you. It's become the other side. I know, right? It's a problem. Oh, Shmuley Butler is peddling his wares. Hat over the press. Oh, very nice. How'd you even know I'm here? You're like stalking me. You're following me. Oh, Amish hat. Beautiful. I didn't have any comments. So everyone's kochen sich in that harder, huh? Hey, Rashmi. That's a big gilly, yeah. Everybody knows what the Shmuley Butler?
Sure, for sure.
We got the pictures.
Same class? Elke, Jungia? Okay. I don't know. What'd you say?
No, you met the Sat Rebbe today, no?
Which one? There's a lot.
They're about it, no?
We gave kids stuff to see.
Good. Okay.
You're gonna close it.
I hope he learns it. Yeah, very nice. It's making the richtige tumul. So anyway, I just was saying what a chassid can do. You can take something that's a simple thing and turn it into. Sometimes you need a dugma chaya for that, a good example. So I think this nigun is a good example, right? Try next time you hear something out there. I'm not saying you should go listen to some goyish music and turn it into chassidish nigun, but it's the same idea. How you take something that's just a plain golem eitz, like raw material, and you can turn it into something that's alive. Okay, with that said, so let me go over to Chof Ches Sivan. Shlocha Pratis. This is like Savyad that the Rebbe edited the Sikha Nun Aleph 30 years ago. That night when the Rebbe gave out the Kevitz Chof Ches Sivan. You all know the story. They recently released a video of me talking about it a bit. So if you didn't hear it, you'll hear it now. Or at least some of the details. So I had the schus 30 years ago, was Chamishim Shana, 50 years from when the Rebbe came to America. Now it was 80 years. So we decided to be matzir to the Rebbe, and I wrote a note to the Rebbe that about preparing a kavitz to honor the Chamishim Shana, which would include the story of the Hatzalah, of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, and hopefully my biggest goal really was to get the Sikha that the Rebbe spoke that year in Tov Shin Aleph. Beis Tammuz at night, the Rebbe Fabrein, something like 6 hours in 770, spoke about Arba Tzrichim Lehedis, Arba Chayovim Lehedis, the Birchas HaGemel, and one of them, of course, is someone that travels Mever Layam, and it's Solas Nefoshes. And the rest of the kavitz was Sichas and Maimorim from connected to Chof Sivan and Tesodar when the Frierdiker Rebbe came. Anyway, the Rebbe responded that should Eitzes and Holas Aguch and Tzach V'Yehebash Asoch Rabba. And I went to them, and everyone agreed, and we prepared the kavitz. There was a lot of work. Gave it all into the Rebbe, and to the Rebbe I tried to. I said I couldn't really get the people that were there in Tov Shin Aleph when the Rebbe Fabrein didn't really remember much of what the Rebbe said. So I asked the Rebbe, there's a little chutzpah to do so, but I asked the Rebbe and I asked Mechila right away if I crossed any line, that maybe the Rebbe can write some nekudas of what he said, or maybe the Rebbe has a shimus of it. We knew that the Rebbe had a shimus. And then we would prepare it, and we'd develop it into a whole to a sikha. The Rebbe wrote Ein Hazman G'rom Klal. So at least the Rebbe saw the request and wrote Ein Hazman G'rom Klal. So then in the kavitz you'll see only one page really that I was able to put together from the memory of those that were still around. And then that day, Chof Ches Sivan, 30 years ago, Mamish 30 years ago, like tomorrow, the Rebbe went to the oil, and I got a call from Rabbi Groner, who said to me, how many kavitzim are you printing? We already went to the printer. We said 1,000, 2,000. So he said to me, okay, how long will it take to print 10,000 copies? So I right away 10,000 copies. Why 10,000 copies? It's not selling 10,000 copies. But it was chesed already because the Rebbe had given out kavitzim and kutresim. And I didn't want to ask. He said, and can you have it ready for tonight? So I called right away the people dealing with the printers. And the printer was in New Jersey, Bookmark Press. Gary was the name of the guy. Anyway, bottom line is, I schlepped out a label, Groner, that the Rebbe is going to give it out. And therefore they needed it for that night. So, you can imagine the Simcha Gdela. Not just we machaven to give out a nice kavitz in honor of the Rebbe, Chamishim Shana, Chof Ches Sivan, but also the Rebbe is going to give it out. So I remember it was that was something. And the printing started. They started printing fast. As you all know, the Rebbe spoke a sikha that night after Mincha. Then they davened between Mincha and Ma'ariv. When was it? I forgot already now. The sikha was after Mincha and then after Ma'ariv. There was another. So after Mincha, they davened Ma'ariv, and the Kutreisim were coming, but they wanted the Rebbe to go back to at least have something to eat because he didn't eat all day because he went to the oil. So the Gabbai announced the Machana Hefsek, and the Rebbe Tzarikum, the Teilm de Kutreisim. And the Rebbe said, no. The Rebbe took the mic and said, he went over to the mic, he said, Shtot HaHefsek v'Machana Hemshech. And this is the Sikha that now was just published. You'll see the second part, the Rebbe says, Machana Hemshech, and he actually talks about it. Asanishkin Hefsek Nasa Hemshech. And then by the end of this Sikha, then the Rebbe gave out the kavitz, thousands and thousands to everybody that came over. A little history. But history is also, it's not just Tam that Rebbe gave it out, it means that the Rebbe felt this kavitz had in it a message, that a nitzchizdik message for all those that got it, and till this day. So now we're 30 years later. So let's talk about Chof Ches Sivan. Since Ashgacha Protich you brought this. So interesting, I want to talk about two Hagahs that the Rebbe edited, which we had questions then, and we still have questions today, what the Rebbe meant. If you have it, you'll see in the Keppel. So it says, Yevel Shanim Lahatzolas Kfei Gushus Amur Shlita, Varabonis Hatzitkonis Nishmas Eiden, Yevodel L'chaim L'chaim, because she had already, this is Nun Aleph, so it was already after his Talkus. Me'emek HaBecha HaYirapi, and we wrote, Higaitom Tzlocha, Higaosam Tzlocha La'atzah Sabris, B'yem Beis Chof Ches Sivan, Hei Tov Shenal. The Rebbe changed Higaosam, he wrote Ubiyosam Tzlocha. So instead of arriving successfully to America, the Rebbe wrote Ubiyosam. So here's the Shaila. What's the difference between Higaosam and Ubiyosam? So I'll tell you my thought on this.
Okay, what's the question again?
Why did Rebbe change the word? From Higia to Bia. Basically, Higaosam to Bia.
Maybe the Yosem is more proper.
Huh?
The Yosem is probably more proper, no? Grammar.
That's maybe Pshutish Shamikra, could be. But in Hebrew, to arrive is perfectly signed. Higia La'atza Sabris. You have to say Bo La'atza Sabris. I'm not saying it could very well be just a technicality. I'll just give you a Pirush Pnimi. Okay? Really good. So it's Al Pi Hamavur Chassidus. On the Pasuk, Kisove al Haaretz. Why say Kisove? So Rashi, based on Medrash, says, because it wasn't they just arrived. They arrived at Pnimius. It comes from the word Bia. It's intimate. Sheva Shekofshu, Sheva Shecholku. So yeah, you could arrive somewhere, but you don't necessarily arrive. You're just passing through. When you say Biyosam in Hebrew, it means in a primizdik way. Now, whether the Rebbe means that or not, Yeshlem b'derech hefsher, I'm not going to say for sure. But that's what I was thinking about today, because the Rebbe said actually in the Sikha Yud Shvat Tov Yud Aleph, after the 70 years ago, after the Maimer, the Rebbe said, "Holach lekarte, ozl lekarte holach b'nimusa." That when you come to a place, you have to follow its customs. Since when a person gets a new position in America, the custom is to make an announcement. So the Rebbe said he's going to make an announcement. And he said, as Avis Hashem and Avis Yisrael and Avis HaTeirah. And that's when the Rebbe said, Retzach Nishtayin Feglech in Buzim. So what does it mean? There's a Sikha of Yeshiv Nun Beis where the Rebbe explains that when a Yid comes to a place, even though his place is always in Kedusha, but since he was sent there in a shlichus, he has to be mislabish b'pnimius in the place. He can't just say, you know what, I'm going to stand like a tourist on the sideline. And the Rebbe brings that the Alter Rebbe says that's why Mishpatim Tereir, that's why we speak the languages of Umas Elam. L'cheira, you could argue, wherever a Jew went, Leishinu l'shenum, Leishinu levusham, we should be speaking Hebrew all the time, or Yiddish. No, we speak English, and we teach in English, and we learn English, and in Russian it's in Russian, and in South America it's in Spanish, Portuguese, and all the different countries. So Alter Rebbe explains, because part of the Birur Ha'elam is you mavada the languages. So you don't just stand beif and arai, it's a pnimius. That's called ignorance. That's not... well, like some people say, I didn't learn English, I also didn't learn Hebrew.
I mean English.
Well, I will say this. When the Rebbe was asked the question, should they teach the classes in Yiddish? So the Rebbe said no, not necessarily, because it's harder if a child is learning, let's say, Gemara, let them struggle with the learning Gemara, they don't have to also struggle with the language. Just for the record. I'm not going to get now into discussion. I mean, there's class action suits going on, people suing the whole Torah for not giving them adequate tools. But I can tell you a lot of graduates of Ola Torah are ganz feine millionaires. So it seems like they figure it out. Huh? Okay. Al Kaponim. So maybe Biyosam, the Rebbe is being Meramiz, that it wasn't just coming to America, but also being mavada b'primius America. What do you think? Yesh lehem b'derech hefsek. Shkoyach. You have a better touch? A better beer? Okay, so fine. Yeah. I didn't think about it, then I thought about it again. Then there's a second order.
The Hittik measure.
Yeah.
It's the same equipment.
Could be, yeah, I'll say mechanach. The Rebbe also changed from Ozav, Riga, to Hittik Miriga. Ozav means to leave, Hittik means to move. So maybe a Rebbe doesn't really leaves, Kedusha Le'ezozim and Kema. So it's more Hittik, he moves, but he doesn't leave. Al derech zeh. That's where you have tzaddik bar le'ir, when you have a thought comes to, it's in a primizdik way. The second order, which is a little more sensational, if you wish, so you may get more attention. It's not as, yeah. 15? Man, the guy knows very good. So the Rebbe writes, in the order it says, Yedua, that the Frierdiker Rebbe was connected Sfiras HaYesod, and his name was Yosef, the Midas HaYesod, after the 5 Nesiim before him, which was the Midas before. We know the Alter Rebbe is Chochmah, Mittel Rebbe Bina, Tzemach Tzedek Das, the Rebbe Marash is Netzach, the Rebbe Rashab Haid. Then the Rebbe adds, B'ksav Yad Chodshe, V'yesh Leimer, Shekol Dereinu, that our entire generation, Noshim V'taf, Kusfiras HaMalchus. You hear? So the Rebbe didn't say just that he is Sfiras HaMalchus, the whole generation, men, women, and children. Which means you, all of us. Maybe the Rebbe is being merames that since we're the Rebbe's generation, because obviously the Rebbe is the Nasi Hador, but it extends. Because it's interesting, you don't say that by the Frierdiker Rebbe and the other Rabbeim. You don't say the Deir is a Deir of Yesod. You say the Frierdiker Rebbe was Yesod. You never hear the Alter Rebbe was Chochmah, that this whole generation was Chochmah. But here the Rebbe makes that Hadgosha, which I think goes back to what I was saying earlier, that the Rebbe lives on in each one of you and each one of us. So that I want to go back now to the theme of this day. But I behagdim with an introduction. In 1966, Yud Shvat, Tavshei Chavov, it's a very powerful sikha about Mazari B'chaim, Afhu B'chaim. Okay, so this is a central theme that Rebbe said many times, that it says Yaakov Avinu Leimes. The Pasuk in Vayechi doesn't mention ever Vayomos on Yaakov. So the Gemara says Yaakov Avinu Leimes. Ay v'chichontu chantayu v'sabtu sabdayo v'kovru kovrayo. The Gemara says, what do you mean he didn't die? They eulogized him and they embalmed him and they buried him. The Gemara Samachpela. So what do you mean leimes? So the Gemara answers, Mazari b'chaim afu b'chaim. Just like his children are alive, so too he's alive. So there's a lot of sikhs on this topic, but one that stands out is the one I just quoted, 1916 in Tavshei Chavov. And the Rebbe said very, very sharp words there. He said 16 years ago, which was Tavshin Yud, before 16 years ago, the Rebbe, he's talking about the Frierdiker Rebbe, controlled where he wants to go, what he wants to do, what he wants to say. But today, we control that. Because if Zari behave in a way that's consistent and the spirit of what the Frierdiker Rebbe wanted, then he's b'chaim. But he doesn't control it, because we also can behave in a way, the opposite, and then Achman al-Islam, the Rebbe didn't say the second half, but it means he's not b'chaim. Because it's Toli and Zari. You don't usually hear this twist on it, but in simple terms, it's very, very simple. The Rebbe alive today, after Gimel Tammuz, is dependent on you and me. You and I, as they taught us in the Old Torah. I didn't go to Old Torah, I went to Ocean Park. I went to Bedford and Dean. I graduated, so I'm more educated. And that's the answer that maybe nobody wants to hear, but that's the answer. The Rebbe's life is right now dependent on you and I, whether we like it or not. Now you say that's pretty strong words, the Rebbe is dependent on us. Yeah. Gola Talmud is Magamaglin Rabbe Ime. If somebody ends up in Ir Miklit, a student, his teacher is sent to go with him. Whether we like it or not, Moshe Rabbeinu ends up in the midbar because the Idn are in midbar. The Rebbe is, I don't want to say stuck with us, but he's bound to us. And today for sure. So, it's not the theoretical questions that Rebbe alive or not, it's really a very practical one. If you make him come alive through your behavior, and the way you speak to other people and you mashpia on others, then he's alive through you. He's working through you. And if not, I don't have to say the end of the sentence. It's very clear. So, and I don't like to beat around the bush, to cut straight to the chase. To me, Chof Ches Sivan, and similar to Gimel Tammuz, is really a test. The Even HaBeichin is one thing and one thing only. What are you going to do? Are you going to make the Rebbe come alive more? Or be neutral and just be a bystander and do nothing? Or Rahman al-Islan, the other option where, so remember we all know the Sichach, Tezvov Tammuz, Tov Shemem Hey, the beginning of the court case. And what would the Rebbe say then? That the Tzaddik Keneged is Taina. Their Taina is that Chabad is nicht active. It's not active. And what did the Rebbe say? So the whole Nitzachon of Hey Tevis was to show that it's active. That's why the Rebbe was so upset then when the Bochum was draining sich in the Gassen and counting the Fliegen, or the Fegel. What did the Rebbe say? Fliegen or Fegel? One of the two. Basically the same idea. Why? Because it goes. The whole point is that if Lubavitchers are going to be Leidigayers, then it proves that it's not active. So by the Rebbe, the whole point was that to show that it's even more active and more alive. All the Lashenis the Rebbe used then, Tezvav Tammuz. Then even more so now. And I say this without any complete, no arrogance at all. I feel personally, after Gimel Tammuz, after everything I saw in my life, and I was Zeiche, and it was not through much Aved of mine, it was given to me on a platter. I was in the right time in the right place. After what I saw, the Rebbe and the Rebbe's Mesiras Nefesh, and constant patience and persistence with us, to me it would have been complete betrayal. And I use that word very deliberately. A complete betrayal, a disgrace, if people like myself, who saw the Rebbe and understood him to some extent, and I worked in the Sichos and I remembered the Rebbe's words, that if I would give up and suddenly say, you know what, okay, I can't be a chayzer anymore, I can't be a maniach because the Rebbe's not farbringing, so I'm going to go into business or do something else. To me, it was not conceivable, not because I'm such a chassidish guy, because to me it was like, what do you mean? You were there. You're a living witness. And the Rebbe said that when I don't speak, when the Rebbe has a stroke, he said, Gimel Shvat Tovshin Nun Beis. Those that heard me should be my mouthpiece. So to me it was like a given that, of course, that's like, you trained your whole life to be a soldier, and then suddenly you decide, you know what, I'm out of here. So for me, Chof Ches Sivan as well as Gimel Tammuz is really, that's the Even HaBeich. It's a very simple question. Are you in or you're not in? And if you're in, you got to pay the price. You're in the army, you have to fight in that army. You want to go out? I don't judge anybody. But don't say you're in and not be in. In means there's a price to be paid. Yeah, you have to give your life for it. When I say give your life, Mesiras Harotzen, we don't, thank God, don't have to give our lives begashmis today. And I really feel this way very strongly. That's why I wouldn't sit here in Fabring and tell stories and sing songs and not say this punchline. To me, is like under the whole day is what's significant of Chof Ches Sivan if we're not going to embrace the Rebbe Shlichus to us. The Rebbe came to America, was saved by the Eibishter, came to America to change this America, together with the Friedrich Rebbe, obviously. America's nicht anders. And we are now the children of the Rebbe in America, and of course all over the world, and that's what we need to continue doing. If we don't do that, then Chof Ches Sivan really has no meaning. It's a nice day, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of farbrengens and videos, publications and pictures. That's all good. But the bottom line comes down, it's a personal question you have to ask yourself. So if I'm in, what am I going to do? How am I going to dedicate my life to the Rebbe's inyanim and to the Rebbe's commitment? And again, I don't judge. If someone says, I don't feel for it, I feel bad, but what can you do? You can't. If your person doesn't feel, they don't feel. We're here to Fabreing in order to awaken each other. And the same thing with Gimel Tammuz. Yeah, we could sit and cry why the Rebbe's Begashmi is not here and why the Rebbe had to go what he had to go through. And you could sit and talk about it forever and go nowhere. I don't relate to the Chassidim that said Gimel Tammuz is a day for B'chias, to go to the oil and bang your head in the wall and cry all day. If you don't do that, you're not a Mekusha. To me, that's Stam Shtusim Gemurim. The Rebbe never did such a thing. The Rebbe never behaved that way. And of course, they'll say, well, the Rebbe had, the Rebbe was here. Now we don't have the Rebbe. Okay, you know what? People like that, to me, are living in the past, and they're not living in the present, and we have a job to do. That's all that matters. What's your job? Not your feelings and so on. I'm not saying some people feel sad because today. I'm not saying you shouldn't feel sad. But I don't know those people that cry, I don't know if they lose much sleep also. It's very nice to put on shows. If I saw someone that lost sleep because Gimel Tammuz happened, I would be impressed. I think everybody sleeps quite peacefully. So you have to also, to me, it's Even HaBeichen is Ma'aseh B'Peil. The Ma'aseh B'Peil is that we have more responsibility today than ever before, because precisely you cannot bring someone Begashmis to the Rebbe in 770. And I don't care what people say, but Ruchni is, yes, I understand, but you don't have that, so the only thing you can do is give them the Pnimius, what the Rebbe meant. What the Rebbe means, I should say, to you, to myself. That's what I do. I wrote Toward a Meaningful Life, and it's a book that, thank God, has been through Hatzlacha. To me, it's a living example. One example. I mean, I'm not the only one. Hopefully there's more to show that the Rebbe's teachings can affect people today. It's not that the Rebbe affected people 50 years ago, 30 years ago. Right now. And all of you can do exactly the same. You just have to think it through, what the Rebbe means, what does Chassidus mean, and then find the words to communicate it to somebody. That's our achrayis. Chof Sivan, I don't know any other hera except that. Re-embracing that mission with new chayis. And yes, the kavanah, of course, is Chatzi Kadra Tachten. I'll talk about that in a minute, the details. But Bechlolis is the shlichus of the Rebbe. 80 years ago today, the Eibishter chose that shlichus should move to this part of the world, which has its own challenges, which of course what makes Chof Sivan unique, because it's not a different place, it's America, which we need to talk about, which we'll talk about. But that's what it comes down to. Eibishter Rebbe, then we're in all the way. And I don't want to say the second half. So Mazari B'chaim, Kav Yochel, the Rebbe is totally right now in us, whether you like it or not. Because when you go, wherever you go, I remember, I think it was Truma Tov Shem Vov, Shabbos Pasha Truma. And the Rebbe spoke, I remember it was a quite extraordinary sikha. The Rebbe said, I received a letter from someone who calls himself a chassid. So he was asking me, how do I explain to the Aid, I think he said Borough Park, maybe not, I don't remember for sure. How do I explain to an Aid why the Rebbe's kochen sich, what's this Mashiach, koch sich Mashiach? And I remember the Rebbe didn't even answer the question. The Rebbe was so disturbed that I can schreiben as a chassid, and he doesn't have what to answer to a person. Which means, the Rebbe said, what is that person learning from that? That the teacher of this person that doesn't have an answer, how does it reflect on his teacher? When you see a Talmud who doesn't have an answer, it means the teacher has the problem, not the student. The Rebbe is saying basically it's reflecting that my chassid doesn't have what to say, so what kind of Rebbe am I? Didn't say those words, but that was the teich. And I remember the Rebbe saying that. I said to myself, wow, that means that every one of you, whether you like it or not, they call you a Chabadnik. You could say, I'm not a real Chabadnik. I know people say, don't look at me, I'm not a Chabadnik. You want a Chabadnik? Look at Pinya Karf, I don't know, whoever your Dugma Chai is. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what you think, it's what people think. They say, Chabad Chosid. So what does that mean? How you're going to behave is going to reflect what the Rebbe trained you. That's what I would do. If I saw somebody who's like so-called a representative, I say, let me see that person. If that person is behaving in a way that is embarrassing, it means the teachers, The Sifri says, what v'haftas Hashem lekecha? Last kidei was the lashon there. Shemisav al yotcha. That you should make God beloved to people, not just you love God. That when they look at you and they say, "Oh, this is a godly person," that's a God I will love. Kiddush Hashem. So it's a big achrayis. Okay, so I know I once verbringed about this. So one guy told me, you know what? I came to Maskana. I'm going to cut off my beard. I'm going to make sure I'm not a Chabadnik. That way I don't have this problem. I said, that's the Maskana you took from my verbringing? That's very interesting. You got inspired by me to do that? He says, yeah, that way no one's going to look at me and I won't reflect badly on that. Okay, obviously that's somewhat of a, that's not where I'm going. That's not the point is the other way around, you know? And I was inspired that I had such ashpa on him. He didn't end up doing it, trust me. And if he was going to do it, I wouldn't blame myself. Probably the other things going on as well. So the point is, my friends, is this. We're here Chof Ches Nisan, Sivan rather. It's like 2 months from Chof Ches Nisan, another Chof Ches. And we're honoring and celebrating the Rebbe is coming biyosam le tzlecha la'atzah sabris. And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. Is the Rebbe's, all his work, is it coming to fruition through you and through me? And you can't look at other people. The Rebbe did not like when anyone looked at it. You have to look at yourself, and there's no one else to look at. So there's no way out. Like the Rebbe once told somebody in Yechidus, I heard that the Rebbe, he asked the Rebbe what should be his shlichus. So the Rebbe said to him, remember, once I tell you, you will not have an excuse that you didn't hear. So think about it twice before you ask me. So the Rebbe said. And many times the Rebbe was maram is that sometimes better I don't say because that way you won't at least go against my will. So I don't say. I know a guy that I personally know. He was thinking of changing. He was working, changing his job. And he wrote to the Rebbe. He wanted to go into contracting, I think. The Rebbe didn't answer him. He wrote 3 times, no answer. Now he happened to know the Rebbe, so he called the Rebbe. He went to see her and said, I don't like the Rebbetzin should mix in, but I need an answer. Maybe the Rebbetzin can ask the Rebbe. So the Rebbetzin, her edel way, she said, if the man nicht geantwortet, meaning if the Rebbe didn't answer, maybe there's a reason. Maybe you should rethink your question. She says, no, I'm gonna. She says, okay, if I have an opportunity, I'll ask. Anyway, the next day she calls him. She says, so I had the opportunity to ask the Rebbe, the man, she said, the man. And the Rebbe said, Zogem as a bet folgen, was sich empfen, welchem empfen. That if he listens to what I say, he's going to. She says to the Rebbe, of course I'll listen, that's why I'm asking. She says, no. If my husband tells you, means you think it over well before you ask. Do you really want to hear an answer you may not like? So he thought it over, and he asked, and he's told the Rebbe, he wrote to the Rebbe, he promises he'll follow it, and the Rebbe told him he shouldn't change jobs. And he told me even then he had an asayim, because he really was convinced that the Rebbe was going to tell him to change. So the Rebbe senses, sometimes a no answer is also an answer. But Begel in Yonenu, B'Peil, we have a real mission. And I don't have enough words to impress upon you that the schus of millions, billions of people on earth, and we have the Ashreinu Matev Chalkeinu, that we were zeichet to grow up, not because of our schusim, in a home, in a system, in yeshiva, a world that the Rebbe created. And we know, so if we don't follow the Rebbe, what do we expect from people who never met the Rebbe? Or don't even know the Rebbe's directives? So we have a big achrayz. There's not that many of us. If you compare it to the big world out there, it's a miyut shebemiyut. And it's a great achrayz, but you should also know it's a great schus. Now, what I'm saying may be given to all of you, and you're already in, and so on, but I still sense and feel we could all use a little inspiration in this regard. And you have to think about it. I know Bochrim, I remember, who had all kinds of plans for their lives, I remember one bocher especially. He was a very mitzuyan. He was a great guy, but he was planning to go into business, wanted to make money and all that, and he was very capable. I remember bracha erev Yom Kippur. You know, bracha erev Yom Kippur was like most special moment for bochrim. The Rebbe himself benching his children. Shenantam levanecha el abonim. You know the Shenantam el tamidim rather. And by the Rebbe's chiddush to bench the bochrim. The other Rabbeim didn't do that because that was his children. It was us. So Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur, the bracha for the bochrim was the highest day of the year, higher than Rosh Hashanah and higher than Kol Nidrei. And we all never even went to Kol Nidrei. By the time we finished with the bracha and the chazorah, they were already singing Hine Kachemer or whatever. But the Bekitzer, the Bach. So I remember this vividly. It was the year's Lamed Vav maybe. The Rebbe benched the Bachim. He was crying. He said, the whole Bichas Kainim. And this Bacher says to me right after. He says, "No. I'm not going to business. I'm the Rebbe's person. The Rebbe's crying over us, his children. I'm committed my whole life to that." And he never looked back. He's a great shliach. He's a great guy. But I remember how that one moment that changed his whole. He took it seriously. He's realized, you're in, you're not in. And I'm not trying to tell anybody not to sell light bulbs on Amazon or whatever it is you're doing. But at a fabring like this, it's important to know Mila Hashem, and it's, it could be a chassidus shit, I understand. It could also be a businessman chassidus shit. But a chatchila, when you have the options, not once you're there, hashgacha pratis, you're already there. It's pretty clear from the Rebbe what the Rebbe wants of each one of us. It's up to you to make that choice. And that's what Chof Sivan is. It's a day of making a commitment. You're in, you're not in. And in, I mean all the way in. Biyosam, in the primiistic way. And Deir Ashvi, the Rebbe says, Anoshim Noshim Etaf, so it's each one of us. I remember the order back then, but I didn't remember it for a while. But now looking at it, the Rebbe wrote it. It's a pretty strong statement. Deir Ashvi, Malchus, that each one of us is in that case. It also confirms what the Rebbe said, Tu Talz V'Sekent. Like the Rebbe is saying, it's not just me, that I'm Malchus, but you're all Malchus. You're all part of my extension of me. So it's a pretty strong statement to that. So L'chaim, Ten L'chachem V'yech Kameid. What's your curfew here? If you get thrown out, what does that mean? What time is it then?
Hashem,
You think we'll ever have composers like the Charatonovs of Nigunim, like the Beinani and this and Nigunim? Or we're going to end up with this type of stuff?
This type of stuff. I think it's quite evident.
Huh?
I think it's quite evident.
No, I'm not taking away. It's better than nothing, maybe.
It's more Shvi.
Like we said before, like they sing Holikeinu Shabbos, yeah.
They sing different style.
I remember the Rebbe singing Holikeinu. If you heard the Rebbe sing Holikeinu, you never would sing it like they'd sing it today. You know, it's a primus dikanigan if you sing it slowly. Okay, fast food generation, right? Yeah. So, you know that speaker that I was once invited to speak somewhere. It was in the West Coast. It was a dinner, so I was the guest speaker. Fine, good. But you know, I don't know if you know how dinners work. You have to really be in control of your schedule well, because you can't end up having. You have too many speakers. They end up finishing the whole meal, and the speakers are still speaking, and you can't do that. You can't have a speaker after dessert. That's like no one's staying after dessert. But here they had no say that people were speaking, and meanwhile the caterer was not coordinated. So they already served the main course and already serving dessert, and I hadn't even spoken yet. I wasn't insulted because they paid me anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's fine with me. But it was already late, and dessert was served, and like it's just to say that it doesn't work that way, you know. It's like, and generally they coordinate. The caterer coordinates with the program to make sure everything's done right. Like before the soup, after the soup, before the meal. You know. So I get up, and people stayed. Not a lot. I mean, I would say 3/4 of the people were still there. Some did come to hear me, but I realized I'm not going to have their attention too long. So I decided, I'm not going to go speak now. I'm going to give a whole drasha, 12 o'clock at night. They're already full. They already can't wait to go home. So I told a story that I once heard. A martial example, please. I said there was once a speaker who got up to speak, and he was a guy that didn't know how to stop speaking. So he spoke and spoke. An hour, 2 hours. Huh? You know this one?
So many.
You know some people like that, right? Yeah, no names. And he's speaking an hour and 2 hours and 3 hours. Anyway, some people in the crowd finally, after 2 hours, as much as respect they had, it's a little, this is overdone. So people started leaving. The more people that left, he, in his arrogance, he thought that means the people that stayed really want to stay. He didn't realize they're just either sleeping or they're just more cordial, So he went even further into the talk. Another hour. By this time, there was a few people left. The more people left, finally there was only one person left. And he's still speaking. And he finally said, this lonely speaker who never had attention maybe, saying, I finally found my kindred spirit, my soulmate. One person that stayed must be someone who's really connecting with what I say. So he went into his whole personal life. Finally, it's already 2 o'clock in the morning. Hours passed. He goes over, finishes his speech. He goes over to the person. He says, "So what'd you think?" He says, "I didn't hear a word you said." He says, "So why are you here?" He says, "Because I'm the next speaker." So that's the story I told. And I said, "I want to let everybody know I'm the last speaker." I said a few more words. I said Varteda for a few minutes, and then we all said good night. And that was my story. I thought it was the fitting speech to give, with everybody ready, everything. Huh? So in case you ever go overtime, and there's no one left, you'll know that Just because somebody's sitting there doesn't mean, it could be they think they're the next speaker. Okay, even though there's no one around it. Stam, a milsa de b'dichus. I'll say one more thing about Chof Ches Sivan. So what tak is the significance of this day? I mean, the Rebbe was born Yer Aleph Nis, Tofshin Tofrei Samach Beis. The Rebbe has a lot of significant dates. Yud Aleph Kislev Tofrei Peites, where he says this is the Tag was mit zusammengebunden mit Eich und Eich mit mir. So what's Chof Ches Sivan exactly? So yeah, the Hatzalah of the Rebbe, of course, it was a miracle. The Rebbe got out on the last boat from Portugal, Lisbon, and there were people who didn't make it, and they ended up in Nazi Europe, and that was it. So it could have been mamish gefährlich. But that's more, okay, so Hatzalah. But why 80 years later, that's all that happened then? So I don't know if you ever thought about this, but the Sichos of the Rebbe on Chof Ches Sivan, so one of the key things he says, same thing with Tes Oder, that's when the day when the Rebbe came to Chatzi Kader HaTacht. So what's this Chatzi Kader HaTachten thing? So Begashmis, it means the lower hemisphere. And you compare, when you turn the globe, so Eretz Yisrael is the upper Chatzi Kader Elyon, Chatzi Kader HaTacht. But what is the significance? The Rebbe, the Rabbeim went from Lubavitch to Rostov, to Leningrad, to Riga, to Varsha, to Tvotsk, finally came to America. So it wasn't the only place that Frierdiker Rebbe moved to. But clearly something Chatzi Kader HaTacht. So there's a letter from the Rebbe, from the Frierdiker Rebbe to the Rebbe. It doesn't say Rebbe, it says Le'echad Mechesnov, to one of his sons-in-law. It's printed in Tofshin Ches, they suffers. The Rebbe asked the Frierdiker Rebbe that there's a mimer from the Alter Rebbe that says that Matan Torah didn't happen in Chatzi Kader HaTacht. So the Rebbe asked, what does that mean? Matan Torah affected the whole world. The birds, Tzipur Leitzivtzov, Shemez, the whole world was affected. Only Europe and Asia and the countries around Israel. So Frierdiker Rebbe answers that means Begoli. The Chatzi Kader HaTachten is Behelen. Begoli, Matan Torah affected that part of the world. That's why Eden lived there for many years. So Chatzi Kader HaTachten B'Kitzer represents not just another move. It's a paradigm shift, a move to another Echus, a place that America represented for many years. When the Frierdiker Rebbe said America is nicht anders, why? Because everyone said America is anders. People knew that America, you could save your life, but Yiddishkeit was dead here. Families sent their children during the pogroms in the early 20th century, and they knew, we'll save my children's life, but they're Yiddishkeit. Because people in the boat already threw that film overboard, Shabbos. You were told, America, Parnassah. That's it. Forget about your religion. And that's what happened, thousands. Many. So America was a Chatzi Kader HaTachten in Elikus. You say Tachten, Shein Tachten Lamatim, and this was the real Tachten. Materialism. Gashmis the comfort, but we know the Alter Rebbe opposed Napoleon because even though Begashmis it would have been better for the Jews, but Baruchnis. So if you think about it, America represents, another word I would use is apathy. You know the word apathy? Indifference, complacency, Gleichgültigkeit, Adishut in Hebrew, Adishut. The Rebbe speaks about Eretz Ashur and Eretz Mitzrayim, right? Nedochem Beretz Mitzrayim, Evdim Beretz Ashur. He says the golus of Mitzrayim is dachkus, is oppression, poverty, tzoros. So of course when there's tzoros, people want Mashiach. But Ashur, from the word Isha with Aleph, is prosperity, comfort. What happens when they're there? It's Evdim, it's much worse than the Nedochem. Because the comforts, the golus is golus panimi. Like the Rebbe said, Chof Ches Nissen, the Iker, the golus panimi. And that's much harder than Hitler, Yamach Shemai, and Stalin, Yamach Shemai. Because those are enemies outside, and you know, they're my enemy, and I stand, I'm a Jew. But when you have inside you the enemy, that says to you, you know what? Don't take it easy. There's always tomorrow. You're comfortable. Don't make yourself crazy. That's a very big klippah. And the Rebbe, if you think about it, started with Chof Ches Sivan. But really, when the Rebbe became Rebbe, he was the only Rebbe in history that did not have to deal with Saint Yisrael. This is anti-Semitism, but he did have to deal with Yevsektia, or with communists, or with Nazis. All the Goliaths that we went through in the Middle Ages, the pogroms, the Inquisitions, the Cossacks, the Crusaders, Churban Bayis Rishon, Sheni, the Bavel, Edom, the Romans. The Rebbe became Rebbe 5 years after World War II, and it was comfortable. Yes, we had come from a major devastation of World War II, but that was during the Frierdiker Rebbe's time. The Rebbe became Rebbe in a comfortable America. But the Rebbe's klippa that he had to deal with was the klippa of comfort. So Chatzi Kadra Tachten is a very different klippa than all the klippas till now. And in many ways it's a bracha because we have so much comfort. But we know the other side of comfort is that you become complacent, you know. The Rebbe once by Fabren, Ishtachas Gafne Ishtachas Teinose, everybody's cool, comfort. The Rebbe didn't say the word cool, but I mean, you know, everybody's very comfortable. It's a very hard klippa to fight with.
Why was Al Darby so opposed? The whole Schaefer thing.
Schaefer?
We're in the altar with Napoleon. The altar was he was afraid of this, no?
Exactly.
I guess it was just like the wrong time.
It was too early because if Napoleon and the democracy Napoleon brought would have come then, look, even with Napoleon losing, look, assimilation destroyed the Jewish people. I mean, you have today 80% assimilation, 60, 70, 80% intermarriage in some places. Because comfort, that's what I was about to say. It's interesting, assimilation and intermarriage became a gefa, not when we were being pursued, persecuted. It happened when we got comfortable. Can you imagine? Isn't that like a... Now, Rahman al-Islam, we're not talking about turning the clock back, and let's go back to... The Alter Rebbe recognized that. The Rebbe says, Vayeshev Tov Shinun Bey is very clear, that was then, but 7 generations later, now we could go into Tzarfas, and we could go into America, and we could transform it. So it's changed. That's the Shinui. But then, had Jews gotten comforts too fast, we would have nothing left. That's what the Alter Rebbe was afraid of, for sure. Mm-hmm. And now the Rebbe says, after 7 generations of Chassidus, we can enter that world and still... Look, had Jews come to America, let's put it this way, in Tov Kufay and Gimel, every Jew came, I don't know what would have happened. It took time. You needed to develop Chassidus and develop tools. And it's still challenging. Look, it's still challenging.
When you come with the whole group, the whole thing, you can change. It's like, right when the Rebbe came to America, and then he opened the yeshiva and said,
That wasn't also He had very few people. There was no money. There was no nothing. The beginning of Shlichus, nobody expected to succeed. You see, you're looking now back, but during the time Tavshin Aleph, Tavshin Beis, ask Chassidim that were there. I spoke to them. No one believed it would work. The Rebbe believed. It was uphill battle even with Chassidim. You ever read the Yoman of the Frierdiker Rebbe, what happened the night of Tes Adar? I'll tell you. Frierdiker Rebbe was on a boat for 12 days, right? Coming from Europe. Also Nazi Europe. He arrives in America, New York, and they take him to the Greystone Hotel. You know, famous story. So everyone thought the Frierdiker Rebbe came on a wheelchair. He was very sick, the Frierdiker. He was very ill. In a wheelchair, you see, of the boat. So they thought the Frierdiker Rebbe would want to rest. So they took him to the hotel, and they were going to... No, the Frierdiker Rebbe wants to speak. Frierdiker Rebbe gets up, and he's sitting in the chair, and I heard this because I was so taken by the story. I wanted to hear it from living eyewitness. I heard it from Yitzchak Gronol of Shalom. I heard Herschel Schusterman, and a few people that were there. And the Rebbe, Frierdiker Rebbe says, I didn't want to come to America. The Eibishter led me here. I wanted to stay with our brothers and sisters. So I came because the Eibishter wanted me to come. I didn't come to save my life. I came to show that we're going to change America. And America is going to become a mokim Torah. And there'll be yeshivas and chadorim, and there'll be boys running around with yarmulkes and tzitzis, and girls benching lich. The whole thing. That we're going to make the old home, the old world is going to become this new world. And the way there were maybe 20 people in the room, 30 people. something like that. They said the Frierdiker Rebbe was speaking like you're speaking to 1 million people with a takif. It was like, then the rest of the story we know from the Frierdiker Rebbe's Yaman. Frierdiker Rebbe writes, after I finished speaking, my friends, my chassidim, came to see me. They asked if they can come to see me. And they told me, Rebbe, because we love you so much, and because of your covet, and the covet of your holy father, and the covet of your holy grandfather, and of all the Rabbeim, we want you to know that this is not happening. We don't want the Rebbe to become disappointed. This is not, the Rebbe, we understand the Rebbe's kavanah, but we're coming here to protect your covet, that the Rebbe shouldn't be disappointed. You know what the Frierdiker Rebbe says in the end of that piece, in Yaman? I'll say it in Yiddish. He says, stell sich vor, ich kann sich vorstellen, die Tränen, was ein gegossen von meiner Egen, der erste Nacht auf Amerikaner Boden. You understand what I just said?
Amerikaner Boden?
Boden.
What does that mean, Boden?
I'll tell you what it means. It means the land of America.
So,
You can't imagine the tears that poured out of my eyes that first night that I came American soil. Because that's my friend speaking. I can move on Poshet that the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't listen to them. And he did what he did, but don't think it was without a price. When the Rebbe started with his pulas, it was always with resistance. If Tzoyim, what is this? Mitzvah tank. I know now everybody thinks, okay, it's all durchgebrochen. It came with plenty of resistance. I'm not saying Chassidim are bad Chassidim, because the Rebbe is a leader. A leader does not wait to hear. He's not waiting for an election, a vote. He does what he has to do. But the challenges are great. The comforts of this life that we have is very deep. Don't ever delude yourself into thinking otherwise. It's very hard to want Mashiach today because life is comfortable. Like, like a guy told me, I have sushi, I have Buffenbon, Kronheitshaus, every eatery you want. What do you need Mashiach for? We already have Madanim Mitzim Kofar. Okay, fine. We don't want sodas. We like to have shouldn't be a tragedy in Iran, and a few other things. So there are a few things to fix. But more or less, we're pretty achalta v'savota. That's fine. Of course, I know individually people have challenges. Don't get me wrong, I know. But b'chlolos, compared to our grandparents, the Shmuel says, the Gemara says, Ein bein Yemei Mashiach ve'elam hazeh ela shibud malchus bilvad. We have no shibud malchus today, except so someone tells me, yes, we have to pay parking tickets and we have to pay taxes. So that's shibud malchus. Okay. The shibud malchus that the Gemara is talking about, we're talking about Nazis and communists and Seinei Tzedei Yisrael. So how do we wake up when we're so comfortable? That's the grace of Shaila. So we fabring and we make each other uncomfortable. That's what we have to do. That's the goal. Simple as that. Like, the guy that has a business card, he says, I make miserable people happy and happy people miserable. Mental Futterfass is Moshel with the beer hunter. You know that one? Mm-hmm. When he came out of Russia, he was sat in Siberia for a number of years. So when he came out, he felt really bad. So he told his sister, she was Ben Shem Tov's wife, the name Golda Shem Tov, I think so, yeah. He said, what now? I already sat for the Rebbe in Siberia. There's no more Mesiris Nefesh than that. Everything now is going to be easy. So she said, don't worry. Come to America and raise money for the Rebbe. It's going to be more difficult than Siberia. And Kachav comes to America. It's not so easy to raise money. So he tells a story that when he was in Siberia, to keep himself sane, he would follow the Baal Shem Tov's Torah, that everything is Heiron Avedis Hashem. So he was with a lot of other all the talented people they sent to Siberia. All the writers and the artists and the dancers and the musicians and everything. So he had plenty of talented people. They would make events And he learned lessons, lessons from guys that lifted ships from under the water, tightrope walkers. I don't know if you ever saw, he has lessons from a lot of, but he says he met one person that was a bear hunter. He used to hunt bears. And the guy told him, Mabendel told him, what's the kunz? How do you kill a bear? It's not so easy. Bears are very thick. Suitable babasar. So he says the trick is, bears hibernate. Hibernation, it's al derech ha-bochim sleep sometimes. It can be like 4 months in a row. There are some bochim. In our days, there was a bocher that I think broke a record. I think he slept something like 72 hours. And he woke up, he thought it was still Tuesday, it was Wednesday. He missed the day of film. I mean, I'm sure he woke up a few times, but more or less, you know guys like that? He was very sober. He just slept. I don't know. That's what he did for a living. He was a professional sleeper. Al Kaponim. So hibernation. The bears, they frezachon, and they go into these caves where they go to sleep for the winter. But not just to sleep; it's to sleep for months. They sleep. But the fat that they built up, but then when they finish the hibernation, they become very skinny, l'fiyarech. But then they're also very, very anxious and nervous because they're hungry. So you can't just, they're very aggressive. So the kunz is, he says, you go to these caves where they're hibernating, and you wait outside with a gun, pointed to the cave. You send them little puppies to tickle them, and make them like all nervous in this, and they come running out of the cave, hungry, and you're waiting, you shoot them between the eyes, and that's how you kill a bear. That's what the bear hunter told. And Mendel said he never understood, what's the hira on Avedis Hashem? What do you learn from? What already can you learn? It's like an interesting method, but she says when he met the Gvirim in America, that were grob and ungestoppt like bears, he knows what it is. Basically, he says, our job is to tickle them. We can't change them. They're too thick and so happy with their lives. Our job is to give them a tickle in their stomach, to make them uncomfortable. And they get nervous and they come running out. Bring them to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe will shoot them between the eyes. That was his hira. Interesting. So our job is to kitzel them, to make somebody a little, make them, don't be so comfortable with yourself. Zufrieden mit sich, as they say. Some people enjoy doing because they just enjoy making people miserable. They're just achzorim, They're people just don't like when people are happy. I'm not talking about those people. Those are unhealthy people. They need therapy, medication, or whatever it is. We're talking about a good Chassidish kitzel, right? Reb Shmuley.
It was busy.
Say that tomorrow morning.
9 o'clock. You're visiting someone.
Smooth.
L'chaim. Huh? Ja. So you guys, so what do you guys do? You're in Kail, you're in business, you're working, you're doing the gas, and what do you do? All that.
Basically everything you mentioned.
So we have here the principal of 3rd and 4th grade Holy Parent.
You? No,
We have
but
here the director of YJP, Young Jewish Professional.
what's your name?
Hershey Weinstein.
Weinstein.
Okay,
See you on Monday. Right?
that's right.
We have the lens of Chabad.
The what?
That's what I am.
What is he?
I'm a photographer.
What'd you call him?
the lens of Chabad.
The lens?
The lens.
He's a photographer?
Very, very professional.
What's your name? Marazov.
He's in the top of Chabad today.
I'm fine, I accept that, yeah. I don't see his camera.
He just came back.
Best is to cook in a rice one in Dresden, it's to cook in a rice one in Munich.
Yeah.
We have the assistant
So
principal.
that's what you do, a photographer? That's very nice. Assistant principal.
And you're in a fourth grade, all like that.
Wow, man, I'm overwhelmed. This is like the leadership of this is world leadership here. That's it. The rest are losers. And you are?
Lady Chester.
So what do you do?
He's a great Balkeda.
Balkeda.
Malamido,
Just a little bit.
So your mom is all in chinuch and photography. Huh?
He rips off people their money.
He's in business.
He's a legal thief.
What do you mean? That business is back
For now. Accounting.
Alter Bochum and Samsam.
And what about you? You're going? Where are you going? To? Where are you going? In Virginia. Right. Okay. And you are what? No, but what's his?
Alter Bochum and Samsam.
He was a little offended.
For the Eltere Bochum, okay. Mashpia.
He does real estate.
And on the side hustle, he does
He's a Kol Yachol, he's everything.
Okay.
He's working on his shluchas.
Okay.
That's everybody here.
Okay, good.
Maybe in the Steinmetz.
Hello.
Shiva Fisher.
Son of the Rosh Hashiva in Detroit, Southwest.
Rosh Hashiva where?
In Detroit.
Detroit, Michigan?
Yeah.
You are who?
Gershon's
Gershon who?
Steinmetz.
Oh, okay.
Also, I was for class.
Kos?
Everyone give them from the crazy.
What are you doing, Kos? Huh? The new edition?
Let him know.
With Madam McCamus?
Maybe his wife wants a lot of
He said you rip off people legally.
Yeah. And what about you? What do you
The
do?
director of the Kinder and Sweet Rio to the Yaldi Ashloch.
Okay, wow.
Right? Did I get it right?
My Shul.
My Shliach.
No worries.
Beautiful.
Be careful up here, you know.
Today's in the gas.
Okay, so like all of us.
And who you, right? And who are you? Who you? Right? Who you? Yeah.
And why?
And how do you feel about it?
Not so much of a donut.
Okay, it's an honor to meet all the future leaders of the
Current leader.
current leaders of Chabad and Hagolil, you know, and its surroundings. Yeah.
You're not going to work me?
What?
Looking for a chavrusa every morning, 7 a.m. making an appeal.
He's making an appeal.
What happened?
Chavrusa starts cooking.
What time? 7?
7 a.m.
What?
6.
Chavrusa in what? What are you learning?
What are we learning?
We still give the share every morning on base, no?
And you get to be on Naftali's status.
Yeah, do that online. Yeah, yeah, nice. Yeah.
But people come in person or no? Why she comes in person?
You have a share in the kernel, right?
That's another story.
That's another story.
What's a new kill?
Gimp, yeah, done
Wait, that share's
on New York.
That share's finished?
No. Yeah, every Thursday I give a share.
Thursday. But you have a share every day?
Yeah.
Online. I used to do it in my house, but COVID we stopped. So I moved to Zoom, and so I do it online. We'll probably start again. Huh?
I made sure from the beginning they're all online, right?
Yeah, they're all online. Even now they're online. Huh?
What time is the show?
Live 9:30 to 10:30.
So you do it, right?
Not necessarily.
Like,
Yeah, but people watch it later. Most people watch it. Yeah. I do it then. I used to do it 8:30. People come to my house 8:30. It's recorded. Everything's recorded. It's on podcast. It's recorded live. It's broadcast live and recorded. Today you do everything. What's the point? Of course, once you're doing
today with
it,
WhatsApp, you can hear everything that's speak.
and also podcast. You could hear double speed, right? 1.5. You could hear it.
Podcast, you mean like Spotify?
Yeah. Which a podcast usually not with video. Like if you're driving or running or something. But much more people listen to podcasts than watch.
Right, 'cause a lot of people drive.
So I do it. I've been teaching it for daily 9 years already. I started. No, it was still. I'm just first time. I learned it Iyun. It's very in depth.
Where were you
So
going?
slowly. Just started volume 3. The old volume 3. No, the old volume. Chelik Shalei Nema. Right past Ayndal. We're up beyond the Chelik Shalei Nema. It's not years anymore. It's only written. It's the original Chelik Gimel Shalei Nema.
So there's a whole suicide Dalid, and I was learning it at one point. And I was looking for your shiram on it.
Yeah, Suicide Dollars is heavy stuff, yeah.
Right,
It's all heavy. It's very difficult language. I started by the centennial.
Maybe listen.
Right.
I started Tough Shin Ayin Beis. So it's basically 9 years ago. I started teaching from the beginning. I started with one person, and then people started coming, and then we went as
Start recording it from the beginning or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, one person.
I've been recording since his recording in existence.
Just recording.
He was the recorder.
At least the
I started out with a typewriter. Computers came on the scene in Tov Shem Beis, fax machines in Mem Daled. I grew with technology. First websites were after Gimel Tammuz. In Tov Shem. 1994 was the beginning of the internet for the public. Okay, I'm sure it's over Poshet. Because you need that, the Rebbe, so to speak, stopped speaking. Now we have to broadcast it.
The
Yeah.
internet for the public then was like the internet you saw hand in hand. We got the computer.
We began before internet.
Like,
Before internet, there was a thing called a electronic bulletin boards, BBS. It was called bulletin board system. The whole Chabad Darog, Yesvitz Occasional of Shalom, was working in my office because we gave out then the weekend review in English. So he sat in our office, and it was a dial. You had to dial through your computer to an electric bulletin board. You posted a file. It's very primitive, and people dialed in and they downloaded it. There was no website. There was nothing what you see today. Nothing at all.
What year was this?
94, 93, 92, no, 91 already. So the Rebbe was speaking. I remember he used to tell me, someone from Alaska downloaded a sikha.
Oh, wow.
It was like a chiddush. Then in 94 started the first websites. We right away, we were always using them because it helped Futza. I didn't do it for a gimmick. It was really helping us. Because until a fax machine.
First .com, that was .com?
Yeah. Before that, EDU, the universities had it. Before that, the government had it. But for the public, started in 94. The first email addresses were 93, 94. AOL, CompuServe, and Prodigy. There were 3 options.
96 was the first cell phone. 96, when was that?
Maybe they were probably earlier in the army. Remember, the military has
For the
everything.
public, it was 96.
Yeah, probably. Big one, very big ones. So I remember the first, you know what fax machine did for us? It was tremendous because till then we typed a sikha. If you were not here, you didn't get the sikha by mail till a week and a half later. The only chazor you had was by phone. Fax immediately went to places. So fax really changed. It was amazing.
That was what? That was Mem Gedal?
Mem Dal, Mem Hey, Mem Vov really became broadcast. Originally, it was only one fax per person. You couldn't put a fax and just send to 100 people. And it was all dial-ups.
This is dial-ups.
There was no electronic modems. It was a dial-up modem. It's like the phone dialing.
Oh, right.
You know, it was like a rotary phone.
Look at it this way, we can say that we remember when
Actually, class at 7:30.
Look, technology is still in its infancy.
I know.
Technology today is
It's not going to be in 5 years.
is 30 years old. Technology today is where television was in 1940. It's really in its infancy. Your grandchildren will, it's a whole different reality.
AI.
I mean, it's a big advancement compared to Fiera, but it's not close to where it's going to be. Not even close to it. All that ever spoke about radio and technology, it's very clear. So we grew. I remember we wrote to the Rebbe about the first computer we built. We moved from a typewriter to a computer. So we wrote to the Rebbe that it's going to save a day. Because this way I used to type. People edited. Then we had to retype it. There was no, like if you wanted to move a paragraph, there was nothing electronic. You had to move it.
How would things be if you had today's technology?
No, but you cut things out. You couldn't cut things out.
We do. That's what
Do you think the Rebbe would have that much more time, or because it would be so easy to send?
No, the Rebbe didn't use technology.
I'm saying it must be.
What you used before typewriter?
No, they were using fax. It changed things dramatically. First of all, people could send in letters without waiting for the mail, so that was instantaneous. The Rebbe refused. The Rebbe didn't even use a phone officially.
I'm saying now they can write him if they have a stomachache, they write it. So.
Look, the point is that technology doesn't make you a smarter person. Technology just speeds things up. That's all. The expression is junk in, junk out. If you put junk in, technology gives you junk.
Yeah.
So it just speeds up the junk. From my point of view, Fatsa, today, with the press of a button, you can bring chassidus to millions of people. That was non-existent. Period. But even I said typing. I typed a sikha. If I wanted to move paragraph 3 to paragraph 1, I had to retype it or paste it. The whole thing was... So we saved a day, basically. The Fabring would come out published Thursday. Through technology, came out Wednesday. We still had to write it. It didn't replace the seichel part. And chazar is chazar. So it saved the day. The Rebbe even wrote to us. He said, why... It costed then $5,000 a computer, 5 meg. Meg. But that was what you had. We had to buy 2. The Rebbe asked why 2. So I said because I was writing, and meanwhile someone else can work on the second one to type it. And we had to buy a printer. There was no laser printers yet. It was called dot matrix. It would run back and forth 8 times, fill in dots with ink.
Okay, but we have that today also, no?
Today ink spray, but today it's faster. I'm talking about like this, literally, back and forth.
It doesn't cost $10,000.
And it was 5,000 that printed. Then we had to also pay another $5,000. It was $20,000 chesed because we had to also design fonts, Hebrew fonts,
Right.
and the fonts. It was a whole.
That an artist did, no?
An artist did it, and we had to turn it. It was a big pain, but we slowly moved into. Then computers got faster and better. Then laser printers, of course, changed things.
Sichos Kodesh is later years are made by computer. Sichos Kodesh.
Sichos Kodesh were made in the early MEMS. So a lot of it was made on computer. You see the letters, you can see. Some of it is still typewriter. Depends when, depends which year. By the time we're ready, by the time, let's say, 2000 came around, so then you start already having, Google became an entity. YouTube was, I think, in 2005, 2008. So before YouTube, remember, when you did a video, you had to pay to store it. And they were very, very expensive because there was a lot of memory. YouTube changed that you could, I remember it was like, in YouTube you can put what would have costed hundreds of thousands of dollars of storage, you just put it for free. I have on YouTube right now 10,000 videos. If we had to buy that storage, it would be not possible. So YouTube changed a lot in that in context of video.
And that
You
was
say
owned by
Black
Google
Lives
then?
Don't Matter, then it's all.
No, not right away. Google bought
Bought
it.
it after, right?
Google bought it.
No, then.
What?
You say Black Lives Don't Matter, all your videos are gone.
Mamish, but yeah, I got you. I don't know.
What was that whole thing they had? Remember the whole election translation thing. Some guy was on shear somebody was giving and they mistranslated something. Something was going around.
Yeah, and
Yeah, silver.
his video was flagged. By YouTube.
Yeah, it was like some random.
Everything
or
gets-
something
No, I
like
think
that.
he said that
Became famous.
the cure to COVID vaccine. Like the cure to COVID, and he had sort of less than
Oh, something about like the head or something.
flag, but also
Yeah, something like that.
That's easy.
Wait, Bigler, remember Bigler?
Right,
That's what it was.
Regular?
I remember it was going around then.
Technology was no. For me, technology was always it wasn't like a gimmick. It was a real tool that made things faster and easier. So we always were we were always on the cutting edge. I've been using YouTube since 2005, 2008, but it was still primitive. Cameras. We had a camera that was didn't have quality. So by the time when even when COVID, I have a studio in my house.
You record your stuff yourself, you just put it like that?
We got professionals to give us all the settings, the right cameras and all that. But I wanted to make it without a videographer, so just press a mouse. It's like this, it's a machaya. Obviously, if you have to produce it, you need to do more, but can I do 15 programs a week?
Yeah, you want to be able to do it yourself.
Yeah, so I just press a button, it's either streams live, or I record it, and then I upload it. I did tonight. I have 4 programs playing just tonight that I recorded the last few days. That's why I could sit here in Fabrenga. And people say, "How are you doing both at the same time?" I said, "We have our way." I have a lot of doubles. I'm honest. The 4 programs. One was in the Northwest right now as we speak. They're broadcasting.
Performing right now.
I recorded it last week. A keynote like for Gimel Thomas they have in Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, Alaska, and British Columbia.
This past Knesset Shulchan was fake. The whole thing was not live.
I know.
I'm saying it.
I know.
Fake.
Say it.
What makes fake? It's not.
It's not.
It's either way a second off, so it's a few days off.
Listen, the chesron is not a person. The mile is you could reach who knows how many people. I mean, the fact is, sitting. So I already was using Zoom before COVID, so I didn't have to scramble. I had it all set up. I remember Purim last year when COVID. I wanted to say something about COVID. I just put on the camera and I started speaking. To me, it's nothing. If I have a stomach ache, I turn on the camera and I speak to the world. And that's that. It's a very easy release of my anxiety. I vent. You know? Huh?
For a fee, he can set up your camera for you.
Absolutely.
He'll tell you what to say.
Actually, just did the first time I did a 3-way stream live. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. But you need 2. You need
3 separate things, right?
no. The laptop, when the camera is a dual stream, Facebook and YouTube, and my phone was I have like a double tripod. The phone was for Instagram. Instagram you can't do with others.
Yeah.
So I had a phone and I do 2 very often, but I never did 3. You can do even more than 3 if you really.
Twitch, this, that.
Isn't
Twitter is not video.
Isn't Facebook and Instagram the same? Like you could do together, no?
I usually get
Instagram has made it very Instagram, first of all, is made only for phone.
Yeah.
And-
And even post from the computer.
Right, they control. They don't let, which is fine. It's its own type of environment.
TikTok, you gotta join TikTok.
I'll tell you the truth. I'm not. My office is very. I have people who know it inside out. I just tell they just tell me what to do. I
Young
don't,
generation.
I don't even go on Facebook. I have no patience for it.
Wow, the nicest
Too much. It's like it can drive you crazy.
The young generation's really on
No, you
TikTok.
start seeing comments and you have to
Support
respond.
China, so that's why you should be
Do you
No,
read
it's
the
big
comments? Do you read the
platform.
comments?
Anyways,
I have someone I have people that work
really?
there. I don't even know. They'll send me if they want me to say something. I usually don't. There's too much. I have videos that have thousands of comments. Okay, you have to have a team for that.
The political ones where we got a lot of comments.
I did one on Israel a few weeks ago. I don't know, it only went viral. It's like 60,000, 70,000.
comments?
No, comments more than views. But that's a lot without promotion. Some things just catch you. It's hard to describe. It's hard to predict.
A lot of it has to do with the headline.
Sometimes, this one was called 3,330 years from Sinai. Why is Israel still burning? It wasn't particularly
Yeah, that
necessarily.
doesn't sound like clickbait.
Right, it wasn't so clickbait, but But
They at least have
no, because if
thumbnail,
YouTube,
a picture of something burning or something.
no, it's more when YouTube recommends, they recommend. That's when it starts building. So there's some video that hit their algorithms, and they start recommending. That's really what it comes
So
down.
what's the word that triggers that?
You can't know if no one knows. It's impossible to
You
predict.
have to get an insider.
There's a keyword.
No, and we haven't. I'm sorry. You can't fool it.
I mean, you
It-
can't fool it.
you can't-
A lot of times they set these algorithms.
It's nice to say, but they have very smart systems. You can't fool their algorithms. You can fool. You can't. Show me a video that fooled it.
Well,
You can't do it. You can't fool them because they have very smart algorithms. They sit. This is Google. They have geniuses who are constantly changing the algorithm because they know people will want to
There's a
manipulate.
psychology behind going viral.
Nobody has yet found the formula. So- I know because everybody wants it, but nobody has found it. I'm telling you, nobody's found it. I'll give you
Make something go viral.
because their algorithms are very. I'll give you an example. They know that there are millions of people that are trying to put things that are faking it,
right.
and they want to make sure that those people do not get rewarded for that. For example, this we discovered just by accident. We discovered that if you put up an article that's 10,000 words, which is a long article, let's say on science and religion, you will get much more from Google's than if it's 1,000 words. Now, everyone thought the opposite, right? The shorter, more people, because they know no faker is writing 10,000 words.
There's the same thing on Instagram.
In other words, they know that if someone writes 10,000 words, it can be, because a person who's faking doesn't have the patience to write articles that are 10,000 words. What they do is, the people who are trying to fake it try to find keywords and make a quick article on it. And Google has the billions of dollars to fight that. So that's why it's very, very hard. Now, I'm not saying that,
At least you know you have to write a 10,000 word.
but that's only one of 1,000 different formulas.
Okay.
It's not enough. For example, we are Meaningful Life. We have the website Meaningful Life, the name. My book is toward a meaningful life. So their algorithms point to it all the time. But if you decide you want to get meaningful life, just because, and you start paying money in advertisements, if you don't have a book and you don't have a website, then you're just they're not going to give you that legitimacy. In other words, you can't fool them in that sense. Now, can
Well, once you have legitimacy.
then it's legitimate. Then you should be up there. If you actually have a website called Meaningful Life and you have a book and for 20 years you've been teaching that, then it's like Lubavitch is that someone decides they want to. Someone decides, let's say some galochim, they said they want to hijack Lubavitch, and they start going through all the algorithms. They won't get very far because there's too many checks and balances. I'm telling you, I talked to big mumchim on this. The people would pay millions of dollars if you can manipulate it, and they're constantly changing it also. They're always changing. So in other words, it's almost like, let's say the bank makes an error in your bank account. Rest assured, within a few months, it's going to be found, because they have always auditing themselves. They're not. They know their whole line is credibility. If they lose that and it can be manipulated, then advertisers will say, "Why should I advertise by you?" They really want to have legitimate. They have to have this legitimacy. I know people think you can just even buying. Can you buy subscribers, for example? I know people have tried.
But then at the end they'll catch you.
No, first of all, they don't mind if you buy. The problem is they're not real subscribers because they're not going to stay with you. Because if you pay someone just to write subscribe, you give them a free gift. They're not really your subscriber. Right, they're not really. Therefore, so every company is at some point, an advertiser is going to say, you really have 100,000 subscribers? How come none of them are buying my product? So they realize it's like,
also, you got 100,000 subscribers, but not views. So you only have 50 views if you have 100,000 subscribers.
Look, it's not, I didn't say it's foolproof. I didn't say you can't somewhere, but something at the end.
So what's that on this? What remember what the first say from this?
The bear? Middle foot first.
So whose idea was it? Where did you get the idea to write Meaningful Life?
The book?
Yeah, it's like the most, one of the biggest things out there.
In this world, yeah. But
You know how many times you meet people that
the book, yeah, the Baruch Hashem, Siyat Dishmaya. To me, it wasn't a big idea. It was very poshut. After Gimel Tammuz, after Chof Zayin Adar, I wrote Fabrengens, and I felt the first thing is, how do you bring the Rebbe's message to a large audience? And I saw the only way is through a book. What else can you do? And that's what I did. It wasn't like I didn't have to come up with there are millions of books out there, you know. The Torah is a book at the end of the day. So I felt the need to write a book for as many types of audiences. The key is that it would be a book that anyone can read. That doesn't have to know Hebrew or what a parsha is or what a tzimtzum is. And they can read it. And that's what I did. Obviously, I'd say, I got a publisher, a major. One of the key things was a goyish big publisher. It's not writing a book that's the chiddush, it's distribution. So if you're ever interested, distribution is everything. It's not the... Marketing and distribution. Distribution is the key thing. Let's, for argument's sake, for example, it's a simple truth. Let's say you came up with the best new type of toothpaste. And everyone says, your toothpaste is the best toothpaste in the world. How do you get it to the market? How do you get it? You have to go to supermarkets and they'll tell you, go to the buyers. We have people, we're not buying from you toothpaste. So you have to go to the big companies like Colgate and Crest and so on. And then if they like it, they will then distribute it. But there's very few people that control the distribution channels to the world. So in publishing a book, if you don't have one of the 20 major publishers, you'll sell 5,000 at best. 10,000 is excellent. When you're a major publisher, they'll get your book in every bookstore in the country. That you cannot purchase. You can't buy that.
But then people have to buy it.
No, but if it's not in front of them, they're for sure not buying it. If it's only in Kohos and Judaica world, But if it's in every Barnes and Noble, and it's now Amazon did change a little because now everybody can put a book on Amazon.
Amazon started off with a book.
Yeah, but Amazon, the problem is there's millions of books, but then how do you know that it's there? So you still have to advertise and market it. So distribution is the biggest challenge, not the production.
You still advertise?
The mistake is no, it has its own life. I don't have to advertise. I never advertise it. Once I had a major publisher behind me, changes the whole thing. Let's say you make a major film.
How did he land it?
Your film has to get to 20th Century Fox or Universal or Paramount, or else the film is going to be seen by the 5 Chabadniks. I mean,
Some guys just snuck into YouTube and just downloaded it.
yeah. So
How did he tag land the publisher?
it was a miracle, more or less.
Who's the publisher? Is it like
William Morrow, it's one of the top 20 publishers. To get to the millions of people, you need to get where they go to. Like I said, how do you get a toothpaste? Or anything. You need to get it on the shelves. And to get on the shelves, you need those people who are the gatekeepers. And there are very few of them. And they have a lot of competition. So it's not easy. It's a very difficult job to do. But once you get in, you get in. So Torah Meaningful Life was not self-published. It was published by a major publisher. That changes the whole equation. Now, Kamovin, you still need a good book. You still, and you still need to push it, but
the publisher won't take it up?
but it's a big plus if you have that.
You start seeing something like
There's a thing called in publishing called backlist. Like the biggest challenge with books actually is not the first time you publish it. It's long term. Many authors will tell you my book is out of print. So backlist means when a publisher decides and designates that this book is going to always be in a bookstore. It means it's always in print, like dictionaries, Lahavdil Sidurim. But stam a book, let's say a book about the Vietnam War that was big, let's say 20 years ago, it's not relevant today. So you could sell a lot of books, but so Torah Meaningful Life is a backlist book, which means it's going to always be in print forever.
Wow.
That's a big one because only 2% of books get that designation. Once that's designated that way, then your book is guaranteed to always be around. Huh? You get a royalty, but I got a big advance in the beginning, which is against royalties. You can't make a parnos unless you're selling millions of books. It's not a. If you're a million like if you have John Grisham sells millions of books, then it's a. The biggest thing for an author or like a musician is not the sales, it's the events, concerts, speaking engagements. That's where you make a lot more than from a sale of a book.
things are just to stay relevant.
It's
like singers.
Well, it depends. I didn't write the book to make money. It wasn't my goal.
I'm not saying about you, I'm just
I'm saying,
let's say a singer. A lot of times
the same idea. Music is to stay relevant. They make money from gigs.
Well, today gigs almost disappeared, and a lot of them making from digital music. So it depends on the situation.
Usually everybody copies
The big money's, big concerts for the big musicians.
Weddings.
Yeah.
Simple weddings.
It's a whole business. It's a whole thing. It's not so. I get a lot of calls. People that come and call me about advice, how to get their book published, how to get it out there. But everybody makes the same mistakes. They That's why you don't have many successful authors.
That they don't find a publisher. That's a mistake.
No,
It's very hard to
the
find a publisher.
get
You need
less
an
money.
agent to find a publisher, and it's hard to get an agent.
To do it right, it's expensive. People don't want to take shortcuts.
It's not expensive if you do it right. Actually, you'll make money. It won't be expensive. The
Long
problem
run, you make money.
the problem is most people don't have the humility, honestly, to write a book. I tell people all the time. Everyone says to me, "This book is for everybody. It's going to make millions of copies." Because people convince themselves that so I said to them, so I say to people, I say, go to a bookstore and tell me where should these books be sitting in the bookstore. And I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 people don't even go to the bookstore. And those that go, they right away they say, 1 second, there's a lot of books on this topic. I said, exactly. You're not the first person that wrote a book on the Holocaust. You're not the first book that wrote a book on spirituality. So you have to first see what's out there. And people go to a bookstore, you suddenly get humbled. You see a whole shelf. So I said, so how do you stand out? Why would they publish your book? There's already a book on this topic.
And there's nothing out there that found that interesting time.
But authors that think that they're God's gift can't hear that. Because they say, nothing, no, my wife told me it's the best book on earth. I said, well, you know what? You need more customers than your wife. So one person, you need more people. And I'm telling you, I can't tell you how people are not, they don't have the humility. Like for me, I mean, I had the mazel that I got it, but I also listened to the publisher. I listened to their advice. I didn't think I know it all. I know my strength was I know my content, but I don't know marketing. Like for example, they gave me the cover. So everyone asked me, why is it this cover? I said, you know what? I didn't even ask 2 questions. It looked fine with me. I said, go for it. You have to know your strengths. When you want to really do good things, there's a team. You ever see how many credits there are at the end of a movie? Hundreds. It's a team. There's no one that knows everything. And Lubavitchers in general, it's our Maila Chson. We think we know everything. You're a designer and a marketer and a philosopher and everything. I know everything. And it's not correct. You just don't. Nobody knows everything. It doesn't work that way. And when you do something really well, there's a producer, there's a director, and a cinematographer, and there's editors. It's a division of labor. So the mile in Lubavitch is because we're really, we just go out there and we just do whatever it takes to be a shliach. But the fact is, at some point, you need an accountant, you need a lawyer. You can't do everything. You're just not good at everything. Yeah, and when you come to realize that, that's when you succeed. You don't see any real success big time unless a person comes to realize that they can't do it all. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong. If you go and hire someone that can do something you can't do, what's the chsad? That's a sign of a wise person. You have to do it all. There was the first billionaire in America. His name was Andrew Carnegie. Not the book Carnegie, How to Make Friends and Influence People. That's not that. He lived in Pittsburgh. Metal, steel. It was steel business. So he was an interesting guy. He built the library system in America, free library, because he thought it would empower people. It was a good idea. Libraries that you can go to get, because that was the only way to read books without having to pay. So when he died, before he died, they asked him what does he want to be written on his tombstone. So he said, make suggestions. So his lawyer said, first billionaire, the great philanthropist, built Carnegie Hall. I don't know, all kinds of things. The library system. So he crossed it all out, and this is what it says in his tombstone. It says, a man who knew whom to hire.
Oh, wow.
Gan's good, huh?
Boom with the mem.
You'd never think that.
It is a good word.
You'd never think that. You'd think that he was
That's tremendous.
he knew whom to hire. He knew the right people to hire.
It's a serious bit on
No, it's not just bittul, it's also recognizing that the key success is not that you do it everything, you also know how to put the...
Right, but I'm saying, is that the pinnacle of success? Is that the essence of success?
High level, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
it's not physically possible to do all those jobs. So you have to know.
Verstehe, but I'm saying like to attribute all your
Delegation.
success, to attribute all your success to delegation is.
But remember, you're the one that's delegating. You're the mastermind,
Right.
and you put the team together. The best. You're going to look at the best company leaders who are making a lot of money. They know how to build teams. Their leadership is not in their skills, their ability to lead people and inspire them. They're not necessarily experts in one field. They know how to get good computer programmer. Like a good computer programmer is usually not going to be the CEO. It's not his strength. His strength is in doing programming.
Right.
Another guy is marketing. So good CEOs are people who see like the captain of a ship. They know how to manage people, and they know how to define talent, and cultivate talent, and reward talent. You have to reward them. You can't be a person who it's all about me. Of course, even the Rebbe, his major success is what he left, not just that he has thousands of people that are doing his work. Now, the Rebbe was the other way around. He didn't hire them and manage them, but he inspired them. But he created another generation.
Right.
That's a major thing. I mean, the biggest chiddush is the Rebbe created a generation of thousands of people who are at least trying to do his work, and they feel they own it. Each shliach owns his Chabad house. That's a major thing. No CEO can inspire that. CEOs can inspire if they pay you. Here, the Rebbe is not paying anyone. People are raising the money themselves, but the Rebbe inspires them beruchnis. So that the Rebbe's leadership is very unique in that he delegated, but he made them own their own business. Like, for example, in IBM or in Microsoft or Facebook, they own you. They're paying your salary. If they don't pay you, then you're not going to do the work. And the Rebbe made people feel that they should, own it. That's very rare. I think not just rare. I think it's non-existent. Because for that you need to have the ruchnis that the Rebbe, people inspired by the Rebbe as a Rebbe.
So it's a phenomenon.
Of course, it's a phenomenon. I wrote once a whole article because everybody would love to replicate. Can you create a company that 27 years after the leader is physically not here is still going up? That's non-existent. There's no such thing. Because people are motivated by profit. They're motivated by compensation. You can't just get them to do. Why would anyone do that? If you're working for someone and they stop paying you, okay, well, I'll go find another job. It's tremendous because
Be motivated by something other than money.
Exactly, motivated by a ruchnistic vision, and the Rebbe was a very compelling vision. Mashiach, Geula, whatever, Chassidus, and he made it that the shluchim are not being paid by the Rebbe. That they basically, the milas, the Rebbe did not cause them to feel that they are working for someone. They're working for themselves. That makes a big difference. That's why I always argue that any shliach that undermines shliach is undermining the Rebbe's very system. The system is built on that you, in 25 years after you built it, that you and your children can continue to run this message. If somebody can come after 25 years and kick you out, it like undermines the whole formula of the Rebbe. Anyway, it's a whole other discussion.
How do people who
Decentralization.
You're really anti-establishment.
I think the Torah is anti-establishment. Let me ask you a question. No, but Kerach, I'm not rebelling against the Rebbe. I think this is what the Rebbe wants. The Rebbe decentralized. The Rebbe made it that way. You can have one Chabad house that's thriving $1 billion, another one Chavis. That's how the Rebbe set it up. He didn't make it that every Chabad house is all one kuppah. The Rebbe made that. We didn't make that. And the Rebbe also did not say that on the board of every Chabad house should be a member from Merkos. The Rebbe could have said that easily. That's what every company does. If you were a franchise of Starbucks, you can't just do whatever you want. You're controlled by the central.
But ultimately, they're accountable for that shliach.
The Yadanish, and who's the head shliach accountable to?
Yeah.
So if there's someone that's not accountable, then nobody's accountable. That's the rule, my friend. It doesn't go there. It doesn't stop where you want it to stop. That I firmly believe. I didn't say that people shouldn't be responsible for each other. What a head shliach doesn't have a Torah and halacha. Everything he does is holy. What the Rebbe told people to go to din Torahs.
There is always
There's no one, right? Exactly. There's no one that's above the law.
Wait, why did you say that Merkez
Details. He said so
has
paid
their
off
kind
on
of consoles?
The bottom line is Merkez does not own. Merkez, if you're a shliach somewhere, Merkez cannot come legally and say you work for me, and I want you out.
And if
They can do it more politically, but they can't do it legally.
And I had
One second, the Chabad, they can't force off the building?
Can Merkez go to Shlomo Kuhn and say don't be Chabad anymore? Tell me.
They try.
Is it possible?
if there's
He'll
a
say I'm
head
just as
that's
much
not
Chabad
being-
as you.
Okay, but he can tell another shliach.
I asked you Merkez and Shlomo Kuhn. I gave
Why?
you-
What if he goes
Why
to
not?
court? Why not? We own the
Because-
word Chabad.
Who owns it?
Merkez as a
Well,
corporation.
if you go look into it, you'll find out that it's not Chabad is not trademarked in that way.
So any guy who
So
opens
what
this
sense
By the way, you know that there's Anshe Lubavitch synagogues that are not even with mechitzas. You can't, certain things you can't
Why are
control.
Russians always afraid to word the word Chabad? I mean, Mashiach sent us.
No, because people don't want to have machlekes and people don't want pressure, you know. Like if someone defies Shlomo Kuhn, they'll come break his windows. That's one of the reasons. It's not because of Ruchnis Dika reasons. Let me put it to you this way.
If the head
Not
shliach-
everything is Ruchnis.
If the head shliach doesn't behave, he's not accountable to Merkez?
This is one of the big tainas that a lot of shluchim have. That their head shluchim don't behave, they don't get punished, but someone under them will get punished.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
No, but I'm saying not legally. Can Merkez say you're not a head shliach anymore? Sure,
They can say whatever they want.
They could say it, but do they have legal, can they enforce it?
What do you mean legal? Take away just chayav?
What could they do legally?
Number one,
Let's say he doesn't listen to them. What
he's
could they do?
officially removed from Merkez.
So what?
He won't be listed on Chabad.org, that's all. And he won't be invited
Merkez
to...
will decide that right now the church is
It,
safe.
it doesn't happen.
According to the system that the Rebbe set up, he's not
Yeah,
going
one
to
second.
no?
One second.
You can't come to our events.
He doesn't care. So what?
So he doesn't care to come to your events, he won't come. There are hundreds of shluchim that don't care coming to events, what they call the different names they gave them. And they go on, they feel that they're working for the Rebbe.
Yeah, but
You
isn't
can
that the way the
disagree.
Rebbe set it up? Isn't that
This is a big debate that's raging, and if you want to talk about it without politics or with politics?
With politics.
Hey, if you he works the street 302 over here, so yeah.
Are you talking about?
Actually,
Some of my best friends are on 302. Doesn't mean I have to agree with them.
Are you
Hey, let's make sure he's
302 is not. It's all
just
Like his
One
drive
second.
allowed to be
And
around.
go to offices on 202 and ask them about 302. You'll hear it very.
Meaningful. I work at the Meaningful Life Center.
I work with everybody well. I don't have a fight with anybody.
Double Farkas give me an office.
Good.
Part time.
Morning hours.
Morning hours.
And you're with politics.
Uh-huh.
Look,
No, I'm kidding.
and then
And then,
just last things.
I'm not in a fight with anybody. I have no fights with anybody. It doesn't mean I don't have a position on the matter.
No.
I'm just saying hypothetically.
I did a lot of research on this topic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
New
I
bus.
looked through all the tzatlat and a lot of things will shock you, so I don't want to create too much shock here.
No, you could create
No, we
some
have to
check.
know the
None of us are too deeply invested.
I'll just tell you
we're
something.
pretty deeply invested, let's be honest.
If I want to go out somewhere tomorrow,
I'm not invested because I don't work for a shliach. I'm not under someone. I'm not over someone. So I'm not negay b'davar. I don't really care.
So why you speak the same?
But you are going to be either under someone or over someone.
You have to know if we're gonna throw the guy out or not.
So it's good to know the facts the way they are.
I'm not afraid to say. Trust me, I can share with you.
No.
I just have to give that dome that I'm afraid to say. It doesn't matter.
Nothing will be held against you.
It's koyach.
Now that you said it, so that's it.
Where I'm in my life right now, don't worry about it. I'm pretty secure. I'm fine. First of all, just for the record, I have not been able to find, not B'ksav and not Balpeh, that ever using the word Hetzliach. So let's start with that.
Rashi.
No,
No such thing. What?
Nishlach l'Rishena.
What?
Nishlach l'Rishena that Rebbe wrote on Chof in Florida. Nishlach l'Rishena, the first one sent. So just for the record, if you want to really go, and the Rebbe's a Torah, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be. I don't like to add. I subtract. So I wonder, and I asked a lot of the so-called head shluchim where the name come from. Did you give yourself the name? You know. So no.
Okay.
Most of them were surprised. I said I couldn't find. I didn't say Leishal Reisi Einadaya. Somebody maybe has. I'm not against it. If the Rebbe said it, he said it.
Okay.
So the Rebbe never said it, which is interesting. Also, when the Sefer HaShluchos came out, so every state, so you'd think, and they suggested to the Rebbe that the Shliach Roshi should be first. There's no such thing. They're all alphabetical order. So they taina because the Rebbe didn't want to embarrass anyone. Okay, come on. If the Rebbe doesn't want to embarrass, then why are you calling him a Shliach Rashi? This is official sefer. So I'm not. One second. Let me make it clear. I'm not saying that the person who went first, like Kunin or Chof or Baruch Shem Tov or whatever, that they don't have certain squeeze. I'll tell you how I understand it. It's more administrative. What does that mean? That when the Rebbe, let's say, wants to give $1 to every Meiser in the state, he's not going to go to each one. So he has one person who came first. He'll give it to them. Or if you have to appoint a shliach in different cities, you can't have everyone doing it. It'll be hefker. So there's an administrative value to have so-called a type of hierarchy. The question is, what power does he have? That's the shaila. Not that, obviously you can't have efkedus. Anyone with abyssal seichel knows you can't have efkedus. The question is, what kind of power? So some will argue, I'm just like the Rebbe. I'm the Rebbe of this state. That is mufrach l'gami l'daiti. Because al pi halacha, shliach is a shliach. Al pi halacha. Are you a shliach of the shliach, or you're the shliach of the first mishaleach who's just going through another person? Of course, shliach l'kedushin. If I send you to be a shliach, she's not marrying you. You're my shliach. And if you make another shliach, ad mei shluchim, they're all shliach of the mishaleach harishon. You're not a shliach of the shliach. That's just, it happens to be that one appoints the other, but you're all connected to the Rebbe. So this is where you have to have a seder. Look, also this Chassidishkeit and this Torah, as a little bittel, it's not an issue because people respect each other. The problem is when people start using it as a stick, and I'm in control. Look, Silverberg challenged Baruch Shem Tov, and Baruch Shem Tov did not win. Bezdin and a court and everything. He'll never give up because he's a fighter. But he did not win because maybe there's a good reason he didn't win. Now, I don't believe in efkedus. I don't believe there should be fights. I think that if you're a Chassidus Shi'id, you find a way to make shalom. But when you start creating it into a company, that I own the Starbucks here and you don't belong here, then it's a company. Chassidus is not a company. Let me ask you a question. Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah from Sinai. Right? We believe Torah, Chassidus is Torah, it's not someone's ownership, right?
For sure.
Did Moshe create a corporation? Torah Tziv, Malonu Moshe, Marash Kilisak, everybody's a Yiddish. Hold on, everyone's a Yiddish.
Right.
And there's no brand. It's not like a brand that Moshe created that only his children control. That's some shtusim. So why is the Rebbe's Torah different than Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah?
Right.
Now, again, I didn't say that's why you need a Seder. Obviously, the Rov and Ashtot, there's a Rov. Another guy can't just come and say, I want to be Masada Kedushin. It has to be a story. I'm not
There's
suggesting.
value to being under Merkis.
This word under Merkis, to me, I don't know what it means exactly. What means under Merkis? I know you use the word lightly because everybody uses it.
Right.
But let's not assume anything. What does it mean under Merkis? Does it mean under Merkis means under the Rebbe or under Merkis? Can you be under the Rebbe without being under Merkis? Let me ask you.
Of course, I mean everybody's under the Rebbe.
Okay,
The
so
Rebbe said that every
The
is a
question
shliach.
is, can you be a shliach?
Well,
What does a shliach mean?
Well, the Rebbe said that every single yid is a shliach.
the Eibishter made every person a
If
shliach.
you be a shliach for the Rebbe and a shliach.
No, but didn't the Rebbe create a certain
Listen, some of us were
organization? Like you're
brainwashed.
saying, say there. Didn't the Rebbe create a certain organization with which shlichus is organized and is in a certain, right? It's an organization, so either you're part of the organization or you're not. Obviously, you can be a shliach for the same price.
Zaydi's are not on their markets.
Rabbi Heller,
I'm a snack is also shliach.
Before Gimel Kama was in five
Vote in
times,
favor of
power. They
shliach.
never told me that.
What?
Look,
Never told me
Never
to
told
my
me
Zaydi. You're shluchim for years.
There's one big
Bubba
problem.
wants to go on shlichus.
I'm just saying technically.
No,
It's not a gift.
let's get the elephant out of the room here. Open.
Sorry.
When the Rebbe was here, Begashmius,
Yeah,
we all accept the Rebbe as final authority, right?
correct.
And whatever the Rebbe says, we do. Correct?
Mhm.
Does the people sitting now in Merkez have that same type of Rebbe authority? That's the question. We know that they're fallible. They're political. They can make mistakes. So a lot of people say, why would suddenly they have this power that the Rebbe had?
When it was five
Yeah, but they made decisions
What was
five
some of your research? You said you did research based on black and white, not based
No,
on
no, listen to the Rebbe.
hypotheticals. What's some of your research?
But didn't the Rebbe pass on a
I'll
lot
tell
of these
you-
That's why you need a
things?
Seder,
Like,
son.
didn't the Rebbe say that
Right, how do you-
America itself is at war with each other. Come on, let's not kid ourselves. So what do you do now? In Merkis itself, the board of Merkis, the people don't get along with each
Right, so
other.
what's the
So
children's
now what do you
solution?
It
do?
doesn't ultimately run by Boston.
I don't know, but
Oh, there's that you want to ignore, but that's a fact of life.
no, for sure. But I'm saying.
So who is
I'll leave
Merkis?
it to Emes. Forget
So is
about
Merkis.
Prince
Moshe
Pilarsky.
Pilarsky and Yudel Krinsky. They don't talk to each other, or they don't get along.
So what's
So
your
then what? So
solution?
who's Merkis? Huh?
Rabbanim?
No, but I'm saying I'll leave it to Emes. I'm saying besides
Well, one second. No, I'm not going backwards. If you want to go up to the Rebbe's Sikha, Mitzvah Shabbos, Mitzvah Shabbos Truma, Hitaka says Rabbanim, by the way.
And Rabbanim of each area, or is it?
Wasn't
The
there
Rebbe has all
against,
Sikha.
America's, Rabbanim, whatever they're called.
Rabbanim Shluchim,
Depends who you ask.
Right, that's also.
Let me ask you a question.
I'll love you to go to either
Are
one.
you going to get into the extent of your research?
I can tell you what I found if you want. But I need to tell you something. You understand that almost all of us have been brainwashed to some extent about this?
Of course, we're brainwashed by everything.
No.
Yeah.
I'm brainwashed by you.
Why?
In the best way.
Why?
I don't want you to be brainwashed by me.
Why not? I'm saying.
I'd rather you follow the sources like I did. I'm not looking to rewrite here.
But if you have an influence on the way I think, is that not
No,
brainwashed?
no.
Let's watch
But I will tell you, the way I would like to influence you would be showing you my sources. Not because I just decided I came up with an idea.
Right.
Doesn't matter how smart I am.
Right.
Or,
It's a way of approaching this.
Exactly. To me, the Rebbe is a Teda person. Everything has to have a source. It's not Stam Gzeres HaKosov, there's sources. Well, let me say this. The reason I say brainwashed is because the biggest challenge to me, how do you separate the politics from the facts? There's a lot of politics here.
Right.
Like you talk to somebody, and he'll give you a whole story about Shluchim, and then you find out, 1 second, half of it is politics. It's his politics that he's using. How do you know he's in the Geba Dover. I remember a guy coming to me, didn't tell me his name, and after all his arguments, he says to me, he's the son of a guy that's in a din Teda with 50 other So I said, so why don't you tell me that? I mean, that means you're in the Geba Dover, So that's one of the biggest problems here. I tried to do research without that. I spoke to Berel Shem Tov, I spoke to Shlomi Kunin, I spoke to Yisrael Shmotkin, you name it. I spoke to everybody.
Yanko?
Huh?
Yanko Franz?
Oliver Sholem.
You spoke to him?
But his time, yeah, I did. He had his shittas. He had very strong shittas about this, and he was also.
He bounced from three
He
places.
bounced. He was in San Diego, and he was in Detroit. Yeah.
Rehearsing.
He got bounced or?
I think he
And
says
I-
whatever
I
told him
spoke
he's
to
like
them.
his yad or something.
I spoke to them not just to hear their opinion, where they have an answer from the
Am I
Rebbe.
making a mistake?
I wanted to see.
You told my brother. That was a shit.
I did this actually at the request of some shluchim who wanted clarity after Shmulik Napastik's fight with Kunin. He threw him out. So a lot of shluchim were very shaken up by that. Because they said, I'm spending 30 years of my life, and then suddenly my head shliach can come, I'm just using that term, and say, you know what, you built your whole thing, your mortgage, you paid, you worked your tachas off, and I'm taking it, I want to give it to my children. So a lot of shluchim were very, very shaken up by that. The possibility. You build your whole life. And is that what the Rebbe wanted?
Right.
That someone can just come move and the Rebbe didn't want. That's ridiculous. So I really did a lot of research. What I discovered was the following. That there's I think administrative guidelines that Rabbi Chadikov put in for practical purposes, and then there's the Rebbe's guidelines, which are more the Rebbe's. The guidelines of the Rebbe were basically that number one is the Rebbe wanted every shliach to feel ownership over his shlichus. So that means if you're going as a shliach to someone and he's paying you a salary to to be the administrator. He's not telling you go to another city and do everything from scratch. So then, of course, it's a contract with him. You have a sichsuch. You either go to a din Teda or he fires you.
So it's employee-employer.
But let's say that employee. You come and he sends you and says, you go 100 miles away from me, and whatever I did here, you do there. You build a community and a shul and a Chabad house, and you raise the money. He maybe helps you in the beginning, but he's not. Once you're raising your money, from my point of view, the Rebbe's view is, you have the same power he has over that area. He can't come one day and say, I don't like how your nose looks, and I want my son to take over. That would be like someone doing that to him from Merkis.
Which no one could do.
No one could. The Rebbe didn't want it to be done. Now, if he comes and says, I found out that you are, you did something, Issa Daraisa.
Yeah.
And so even then,
Right, I'm saying.
it didn't take, you can't just say it. Because, and what happens if someone accuses him of the same thing? He also has to be accountable. So,
Based on what you're saying, he should be accountable.
Absolutely.
Well, there's a Heshliach that's doing Goran.
There's no legal system, there's no way to be accountable.
Yeah, what's the
So
system
America
called
shouldn't be able
accountable?
to fire him.
Americans should be able to fight.
So America should not be able to fire him, you're saying?
I don't think that the Rebbe would have used Merkez to fire him. The Rebbe would say, go to Adin Teda.
Between whom? Americans and them?
Whoever has the taina to him. Let's say whatever, it could be anybody. I could take a Utah Adin Teda and I say that I heard things you did, terrible things.
Why?
Why am I taking the Adin Teda? Maybe not me.
How
But,
you didn't do it?
You're in the same town as him. You live in the
well,
same
so maybe the community would take him to Adin
You're
Teda.
saying we don't want you to be derived in the community.
Let's say that the Tetchliach went and did something with Aisha's Ish.
Right.
So the husband of the wife can take him to Adin
But
Teda.
if America's
He
here,
says this guy can't be around.
Always
but if America's here,
I'll
such a
let him
thing.
Who's throwing him
Yeah.
out of the
But
shul?
if
If
America's
you don't
here,
say
America's
here.
In the Chanami, it's not my interest. I wouldn't go take him to.
Right.
But if America's here, that this person,
But
Heshliach, is not
if you
doing-
look at the when the Rebbe was Magia, the Sikh the Agudas Chabad, which is even stronger than Merkez, according because the Agudas Chabad is the authority. They own the the Rebbe writes Eitza Teva. Everywhere it says he doesn't let them have authority. He keeps saying Eitza. In other words, they're in an advisory position.
Who?
Merkez and Agudas Chabad. That's my understanding from my research. They don't have legal power. They have advisory power.
Yeah, but legal power also.
Mem
means-
test. Look at the Rebbe's Magia.
It's
Everywhere.
And the legal
That's mashma. The legal document that they have no power. Remember, if you don't have a board member from Agudas Chabad or Merkez in your board, and they have no legal power, they have no financial power. So all they have is more moral power. They can make your life miserable. They can go put an ad in the newspaper that you're a putz. Or they can tell you can't come to the king's shashluchim. But they don't have legal. They can't come and legally take away your
Yeah, but that's
building.
for
You
anything.
can't go to online school type of thing, you know.
I know, but because the Rebbe was asked early years, because the best way to safeguard this, quality control, what happens if a shliach decides he's becoming a reform rabbi?
Or a Heshliach.
No, right.
Right.
There's no-
Yeah, anybody.
Same, so if it's the
So
same
it's-
person, no accountability.
Exactly. So people ask the Rebbe, should we put on our board one member from Merkez? Or basically, if you want to buy a building or sell a building, you need approval. This is normal business. Any financial decision over $2 million needs approval from Merkez. And the Rebbe said, don't do it. The Rebbe said, no. That's a Gili Das Godel to me. Because he could easily...
They didn't want them having too much power.
Exactly, because then what would happen if Merkez got corrupt? They can do anything. And the Rebbe didn't want anyone to have such power. So the Rebbe's power was ruchni. No, the Rebbe told the shliach, "I'm firing you," which the Rebbe never did. But Ninyan, then the Rebbe, but that's not because of legal power, because the Rebbe has Rebbe power. But he didn't want anyone to have such power, and he didn't want what we call het shluchim to have such power over shluchim that are not employees.
So how did that happen?
It happened because they became like business people, and they want power, and like all business people, they want control. And they're not thinking of the Rebbe's rotzen, and they're lacking bittul.
Yeah, but I'm saying...
To be very honest, that's a real fact.
I know, but I'm saying, how did that happen?
Yeah, you get blinded by power. I have shluchim who've told me clear. I sell shoes in this area. I don't want anyone else selling shoes. I said it's not shoes. It's chassidus. It's teda. What kind of shoes? What are you talking about? But some shluchim look at it very like business-like. And interesting, those same shluchim, when they were on the other side, they argued the other way.
Obviously.
And then as soon as you get into power,
This is business.
that's why it's very hard to trust many of them because they're only gay b'dov.
Right.
So whoever you talk to, for example, I'm very good friends with Mendy Herson. So I always tell him, I said to him, he sees me as a mashpia of his and so on. I said to him, Mendy, you're negay b'dov. You're in line to take over from your father. Whatever you say is puzzled by me. Not puzzled because you're a bad guy. If we went to Din Teda, I would right away expose that you're a negay b'dov. You're a negay b'dov. You can't rule on this. You have to find people who are not negay b'dov. I'm not negay b'dov because I don't gain anything.
Okay, but let's say Shliach decides to...
So how did the dinner get so corrupt? I mean, it wasn't that...
You know me, the Rabbanim are
Wasn't that supposed to be a check on the system?
The Rabbanim are wimps, and they
Is there a qualification of being a shliach?
It's a very broad. Am I a shliach?
Is there a qualification
I'm
of being a
questioning.
head shliach?
No, shliach.
I
Is there red lines that if you
don't. Of course, there's a red line. if there's a red line for
What about Ruchi? It's not Gashmi.
It's called off the shliach.
If I would want to go out tomorrow to
if you have the beitzim and the guts, you can go anywhere and kush everyone, kush and tachas. You can do whatever you want.
Am I considered a shliach?
By whom? Who? By God? By the Rebbe? Or by Shmot?
You're saying that if you don't then why did they ever want the shliach? It's shliach. I can just find my own law.
So go to the Sikha of Mishpah. No. Because, again, even though the Rebbe did want an Indian that everybody should, but he also wanted a Seder.
You're saying Lefida Kavana.
So they're
You
just
shoot
looking
someone.
for the
I didn't say there's no Seder. For sure there's a Seder. No, for example, you can't have 10 people appointing shluchim all over
That's
California.
what he's saying. If someone goes without the Seder.
Okay, fine. So let's say Shlomo Kun has that schus. Has that Shlomo Kun has that schus. But once he appoints people, he can't come 20 years later and say, "I want you out. I want my son there."
No, I'm asking.
He's not God.
What happened with all the buildings in California, right? They were all owned by the head shluchim.
But you know what? The Shlomo Kun imploded, and now it's not anymore.
No, I'm saying, but Lachatchila for the first. Well, he lost it all.
Listen, if a shliach has the ability to all the shluchim in the state that he's going to pay for everything they do, and buy all their buildings.
But he didn't.
No, if someone does that, and he tells you come, but I own your building, and you decide yes, then you're we're not talking about. I'm talking about you worked on the building, and then he does. Well, he just comes for power. It doesn't work that way. It's not what the Rebbe wanted.
I'm asking a different question.
And also, for no reason, just because I'm your superior. Let's even argue he has that to come and just say, "I don't like you. I don't like your family." That's unheard of. That's not.
I don't like that you made a mixed dinner.
Well, you know what?
Was that the excuse?
Yeah.
That was the excuse.
Schwartzy just had himself.
I know. I think Kuna was wrong. It's none of his business.
Oh yeah, YGP is Schwartzy.
And 1 second. And if somebody found Kuna doing something inappropriate, would he also be as accountable as a mixed dinner? There's things worse than mixed dinners.
Well, everybody does mixed dinners now, except for Josh Gordon on the show. And he doesn't do mixed dinners because he can.
It's a shayla navacha, no?
Also, it's a felt a bisschen Chassidishkeit, let's be honest. If they were Chassidish Yidden, there's wasted. What about the Frimishu said?
No, but if
forgot
it
about
becomes
that?
reform.
Everything is purely power? Is there a little more like a little... Is there a God? Is there a bisschen Ehrlichkeit? Is there a little menschlichkeit? I mean, what happens if a head shliach is not a mensch? That's a problem. If he's really... I tell this all the time. I said, if you're really what you consider yourself, you should be the most Chassidish in you. Why are you the most? Why are you the most arrogant huh?
1 second. They believe that they're doing the Rebbe's while they're throwing the person out. They're convinced they're doing the Rebbe's Rav.
Okay, so but this is why the Teira Bavarans out in the Geba Dover can't paskan on sich. That's it.
Puppies, the other dog.
Whoa.
Your head chef?
Okay. The Sham Shlochim don't know how to read Ivri either.
I'm just saying this is...
It's good. It keeps things alive. Right?
Yeah, but I guarantee you that if it was someone that was not in that position and was not related to official people and did that, they would right away fire him if they wanted to.
Maybe if he was on the
Yeah, of course. There's a dog. How could it be a shliach? Of course. Why? Because people.
Because he's on the lower end.
Because corruption. That's called corruption. That's called corruption. That when it happens, if you're, yeah. That's where Chassidus comes in.
But you think that something goes up to Stam is not bothering you, it goes mushroom somewhere. Like I don't mean like.
First of all, I don't like to use words that Rebbe would not use. You think that Rebbe would ever use the word mushroom? You think in his life?
No, I'm trying to say like he just.
So you're using a word that to me is a apostle word. It's a word that people are using to disparage others that they feel are threatening them. Now, they may be wrong, but I think you have to be careful with words. Because you can find titles for everybody, you
He
know.
finds a place of his own. That's it. He finds a place. He goes there.
My
You think
opinion-
the Rebbe think-
My opinion, he should go speak to Merkis. Should speak to Moshe Kotlarski. Speak to Shluchim. Try to do it.
Whatever it is, for whatever reason, you didn't go. You just moved out something.
No, let him finish.
If you went to Rabbi Heller, he'll tell him just go there and settle it.
100%. That's what he told people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, but isn't it, so what about the whole shliach?
I would tell him.
You seen the whole shliach is just technical? It's all just...
A lot of it is technical. A lot of it's technical.
He doesn't believe in Merkez, or he just says go because that's Kavanah?
Who?
Rabbi Heller.
Because he doesn't believe Merkus is being ethical and according to Rebbe's kavanah.
So
They're being political.
So you didn't should have been this guy because it's...
Now, I didn't say I didn't say I agree with Heller. That's the way to go. I will tell you that there are people that have spoken to me that who I've told you should always try to make peace with the shliach that's there. If you're already there, just keep on trying until you get somewhere. Don't just but it's complicated, which I tell you.
It's always healthier to talk.
Huh?
It's always healthy to try to talk about your differences and not to. At least you can know where each other are coming from.
I don't have a very strong. I mean, what can I say is like this. I always believe it should be Darkei Shalom, Darkei Ne'am, but it doesn't always work out. I have a cousin in a city who was working for the shliach, and the shliach didn't like him. No real. I know there was no real grounds.
It's too dynamic.
Yeah, I think they were bringing their children in and whatever, something like that. So they asked me what to do. I said, I don't know what your situation is. Anyway, what they did was, they have a lot of contacts. They raise money. They don't use the name Chabad. And they're spreading Yiddishkeit. They're fine. Yeah, one of those. They're Chabadniks personally, very chassidish, much more chassidish than their so-called head. But that's what they do. Now, is that a bad thing? He doesn't like it, of course. But he's not going to fight with them. Because technically they're not using the name. Now, is it good? I would say to the guy that was their head, why don't you let them use the name? Make peace. Give them an area, let them work. Why does it have to be that way? But so they feel they're at peace. To me, that doesn't rub me the right way. But I would not tell them to leave. Why should they leave? They're being successful. They're not using Chabad. So who's losing? Why shouldn't Chabad do that? I've told Meshach Katlar, who I'm friendly with many times, I said, I think you should go to all the people you call mushrooms, which are now in the hundreds. And you should make a deal with all of them. They're there already. It's after the fact. He says, we can't reward them. I said, my friend, they're on the ground. When you're a businessman, you figure, that's what he said. Good. You know what? And you think they're not going to be others?
Well, it'll be a lot more now that the Americans...
It's getting more and more. It's going to get even more.
There's a natural disaster.
It's a natural...
Let's say there's a natural disaster in that place, yeah? And then then this mushroom...
We all wondered about Mumbai, if it was... Imagine it was not... What would they have done?
Well,
They almost
they almost came out, I think, at that
They're
point.
almost removed, no?
Yeah.
I'm saying, let's say they were not. What would they have done?
That's what I'm saying, so...
Imagine a bush and a harp. What do you
David
think?
takes care that they were on the record.
Come on, do me. Abishter takes care.
Kidding, it's a bad joke.
That would have exposed the bush and the harper, because what do you think the Rebbe would...
Goldstein's not on the record.
Come on.
Yeah, but that's part of the spiel,
Chazanel is not on the record.
Imagine that would have been the case. It would have been, what? When the debts would have been like,
So
okay,
why
no
wouldn't
problem.
Moshe accept all the mushrooms? So to speak.
Because he's a administrator. He doesn't have the breitkeit to do it. He doesn't know how to do it, because he'll be yelled at by those, and everyone's going to yell at him. He doesn't want to rock the boat.
He's busy making people happy.
Put it this way, just the fact that they invited the Rabbanim was it last year?
It would be a major good move, and would on the opposite, it would encourage those that want to go that they should come to talk. That's my opinion. It wouldn't create more of cases. It would create more seder. I'm not even a shayla by me. And right now you have in small little cities too, and they're not going anywhere. So you have to deal with it. If you're smart, you have to deal with it. It's like...
Yeah, but Moshe can't go, that has to be done under the head shliach, no? Like Moshe can't go make peace for the head shliach.
Yeah, but
But he can encourage him. He can work with him. I didn't say he should
Make an
go over his head.
initiative.
You have to make it into everybody together. You
It's happening
find
in New Jersey a little bit.
it's going to happen no matter what. It has to happen. It doesn't work. It's impossible.
Doesn't make sense. If they're only becoming big, might as well be under your...
Yes, some people say yes. Some people have to die before it's going to happen because they're just old. They still have their old shittas in the end. To me, listen, I hear the places like Rappaport and Shmotkin and places like that, they tell me they're both thriving since they made peace. And they're not like, peace, it's they're peace, that doesn't mean they love each other, but it's a working peace, and they're both thriving. They're both succeeding more than they ever did. Because first of all, as soon as you're living with someone around the corner, you can't focus on your work. It's eating you up. The constant, yeah, exactly. That's what, they start, every morning you wake up and see, is the building going up? You can have a heart attack from that. So you can't even grow. So you're obsessed with this crazy competition for no reason.
You're spending your time and resources fighting the guy instead of building it.
Yeah. The problem is that once people dig in and they just have these feelings that it's like they're still fighting World War II and it's over, There's some good mediators. Yankee Felling and Ephraim Mintz have mediated in some cities that have created some form of shalom. In Atlanta and Vancouver and other places.
Hermits.
Huh?
There's a few guys now.
And it's good, which I'm glad to hear. That means, and b'derech klal, shalom is a bracha for tzadlach. It's a keli l'machzik bracha.
America's never removed the Hashliach in the history of Chabad.
They did, but only when it was very weak and bleeding. Because they could never do it. It's not the case. There's a few. Yeah, but it was easy. They will not do it if it's hard. If it's a fight, they can't.
Fight with the Hashliach, no. The Hashliach is not actually appropriate.
Well, there were cases like that that were even arrested for illegal activity.
But they did not remove it.
No, because first of all, I don't think they have the power to, and they were very afraid because if they do that, then all these Hashluchim who are older guys are going to come running after them. And after Gimel Tammuz, I remember there was a big meeting between so-called the head Shluchim and Merkus, and the head Shluchim told Merkus, Kushan Tochas, I am Merkus in my city. You can't tell me anything. And the Merkus argued, if you're doing that, then the people under you are going to say the same thing. I'm Merkus in my city. But everybody wants power. They want the power. No, I don't want accountability above me, but I want accountability below me. So, in some cities it's happened. In some cities the Hashluchim don't have that power, and they won't have for sure. Shlomo Kunin should live forever, but if after Meir Hashem Shana, his children never have that clout over other Shluchim. It'll be always the concept of Hashluchim. They'll call themselves that, but they won't have that power for sure not. And places like like New in Georgia, he had to make peace with Shusterman. Because if you can't, Kunin is a tyrant. Even though Kunin now is Achmanis, he basically lost all his power. Really, means technically that's this, but you can't. So, in my opinion, anything that's not the Rebbe's Ratzon Mamish is going to fall apart at some point. Even b'derech hateva, because you don't really have that power. If the Rebbe wanted someone to have power, he's going to have power. If he doesn't want that. On the other hand, with Kunin, as much as Mishigasin with mixed seating or whatever, he did allow autonomy. There's a lot of shluchim of autonomy under him. They're not, but they tried, but he can go crazy one day and just make people nuts. But because in fact, California is a success story. You do have hundreds of shluchim there, and they're not all, under his guys that are successful. Yeah, but he's a unique character, But I think in other places, it's inevitable. Texas, Florida, it's inevitable because the nature of the beast is. Remember, Adam is chasam ma'aseh yadav. Trust me. You build a building, and you sweat, you and your wife, blood, sweat, and tears, to raise money. You think you're going to just let somebody take that away from you or say, it doesn't matter, it's just a hipach hateva.
But that's what he wants.
I understand what you want, but it's just not possible.
But that's what he wants.
So, in 30 years from now...
Is that the expectation? Like, people, listen to that? Is there anyone that ever listened to that? You build something up and
but there's the fear. There's the fear of it. And the second thing is there's also the guys can't pull it off. But who wants to fight? Why should I fight over what I built? It's really, to me, it's a travesty because there's no way that Rebbe would agree. There's no way. You have a taina on him. Adrabah, bring your tinies. But you can't suddenly, it doesn't make sense. You know how hard it is to be a shliach and raise money. And then someone comes and just takes the whole thing as if like you're his worker. It's like treating someone like a worker, and he wasn't a worker, you didn't pay him. You didn't pay him. He had to pay himself. You know how hard that is? It's like you build a moisin. It's one thing I hire you and I pay you, and I say, okay, but if I don't pay you, it's like Zodi is fine.
Doesn't make sense.
I will tell you a story that this is not so known. It's one of the things I found in research. Lexington, Massachusetts. Shliach is Alta Bucket. You know Bucket? Is in Lexington, Massachusetts.
This is not one's brother?
My uncle?
Okay.
So he was brought out by Prus, who was in Boston. That's another parsha, yeah, because they're also Yudel says he's the head of state, whatever.
These are like going on from Kiddush families.
Huh?
The Shul is also how the thing dealt with before Kiddush families. Some of these fights are as old as Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, but
And nothing changed, the same type of thing. But listen to this, interesting parsha. This very few people know, I don't know why, but to me this is a Yisod should be said. Prus brought out Bucket, but they're not in the same area. Lexington is its own city. It's not even a suburb of Boston. Okay. So now in this case it's more complicated. Prus gave Bucket a building.
he gave him.
Well, he kept the ownership, but he gave it to him to use. So in other words, Bucket didn't build the building, but this building became a shul and a Chabad house, and Bucket built it up, built up a community, you know. And Prus maybe gave money in the beginning, but now Bucket is on his own. Vayhi Hayem, and Prus wants him out. Now, his reasons, there were no real solid reasons. That he's insubordinate, basically. He's not listening to him. Which, is not really... Al Capone, they went to Dinter. Interesting twist here is that Bucket used Bogomolsky and Prus used Azdaba. Rabbi Azdaba.
Oh, he doesn't?
Back then. Anyway,
Was it Tain or chose them as their own? Like,
It's a block.
whatever, I don't know. Please.
you say chose them as
Okay, the kid said, this is fascinating. Now, Bucket had two advisors. One was his father, the old Rabbi Bucket, and Yisrael Lapkovsky, who was a ganz feiner Talmid Chacham. He advised it, like advised. And the back and forth, Tainus said, advised the Boron Lubavitch. And,
Who was the third Rav?
who the third? I don't remember. I don't remember who the third one was. It'll come to me, maybe it'll... Listen to this. So I think Rabbi Yisrael Lapkovsky came up and said, look, he found a tshuva. If, let's say, a community decides that they don't like their rabbi, let's say he did an Aveda, can you just come and throw him out? Can the community just throw him out? They pay a salary. And there's a tshuva that says, no, it depends. Depends what's l'tevas hatzibur. If 2 guys don't like him and 90 guys like him, no. If even 90 don't, but they're ready to forgive him, so the 2 could say, no, we don't want to forgive him, but they're ready to forgive him.
There would be a vote of no confidence? Like, what's together?
Well, listen,
Who decides what's the Tevis Hatzibur?
you ask them. If the people say, we can't go to the shul anymore,
So there has to be a vote of no confidence.
yeah, basically, they say, we can't respect this rabbi anymore. And most of the kill, so it's not. So his being there is just for his own interest. It's not for the kill. That's the truth. So that's what they did. They basically asked permission from Prus's side without telling them the reasons. Can they bring as witnesses people from the community to testify? They said sure. So they didn't just bring 2 people. They brought 100 people. They had to move the dintera to a bigger room because suddenly a bus came from Lexington and they trapped them basically, and then they questioned the kehillah. You're in the shul, yes. You know Rabbi Bucher, yes. You like him, yes. Everybody liked him. Rabbi Prus is here. Do you know who he is? They didn't even know who he is. He doesn't want him there. They say, why is he mixing into our community? He's our rabbi. We love this rabbi. I mean, basically, they set a trap. I mean, a legal trap, but it was so the side of Bukit said, it's a kehillah here. They like the Rav. What's Kumteina's Charai mission here from the side? What does he want? The Tevis HaKehillah is that they want their Rav, and they take it, because he doesn't like something. The building. So the building, we have to make an agreement since he owned the building. So pay him back. No one's arguing that Bukit wasn't arguing he owns the building. They'll pay him back. Okay, pretty good, right? That's it. But they had one last problem. Does the Rebbe hold that the system of shlichus is similar to Rav and a Kehillah? Would this tshuva apply to shlichus?
Okay.
No, so they asked the Rebbe.
Oh, this was
Mem test. This was Mem test. Yeah. They have a Rebbe there. So they asked the Rebbe. They said that the Rabbanim wrote that they're ready to paskin for Bukit, but they want tonight. Because maybe the tshuva, the Rebbe maybe wants shlichus to work differently. And, the Rebbe has that right. He could say he doesn't want it to work. So the Rebbe responded. I don't know the exact lashon the Teichen. Chabad hu halacha v'halacha hu Chabad. There's no such thing as Chabad being different than Al-Pi halacha. If halacha states that, it's not like Chabad has a psanu teira. In other words, it's a teira approach, and Bukit won outright.
Wow.
So interesting, right? So that tells you something.
The government tells you something.
Huh?
I mean, that's a big deal. I mean,
But it's also a milsa b'taimen. I didn't say anything that's shocking here. There's a logic to it.
right.
Because if Proust came and said a real taina to him, like it was something really. So again, you have to ask the kehillah. It's not, you can't just do whatever you want. That's the bottom line. Now, of course, they're going to say Proust is not really maybe head of state. That's what they're going to argue next. But he was at the time recognized. So I'll tell you another thing. When the story, then the fight between Kunin and the Parslik. So Bukit came to the Rabbonim, and Bogomilsky was then representing Kunin, the opposite. And Bukit called Rabbi Bogomilsky and said, "You represented me. Why is it different? What's Kunin's taina to the Parslik different than Proust's taina to me? His community loves him." So Bukit said to him, Bogomilsky said, "Don't mix yourself in. It's none of your business." Blah blah blah. But so there may have been an inappropriate. I think they were ready to pass in the Rabbanim from the Pastor, but they changed it.
Yeah, I heard there was something like that.
It was
it was only signed by two people.
It was not respected. People knew something happened. It wasn't straight.
Yeah.
Kunin basically threatened them. He says, I must win. And that's it. And they just caved. But what was the tiny? The tiny to Napastik was basically that he removed the name Chabad or something. The problem is that Napastik stepped on Kunin's toes. He invited the governor. He went over his head, like he did something that. Yeah, but it was really a crime that's unforgivable. So I still maintain that a shliach should work for the system. Why not? The problem is you need to have some safeguard if the system is behaving corruptly or that's all I'm saying.
There was no psak by the pastor and
the psak was going for the pastor, but then they changed it.
What is the zip on there, brother?
First of all, even Merkers can be called Adin Teda, number one.
Right.
Why not? They're
Well, they could be, no?
They happen as well. Number two, I think if there is respect for Rabbanim, and there's a real argument, fine, bring it to Rabbanim and let them deal with it.
the whole Seder's
The Rebbe always said that. The Rebbe never said anyone's above law. The truth is, unfortunately, some of the Merkers people feel that just like the Rebbe know when we take them to Adin Teda, they shouldn't be taken either. But the response to that, you're not the Rebbe, and that's it. You're not the Rebbe. You're not going to ever be there. You're not going to be the Rebbe. No shliach will take the Rebbe to Adin Teda. But Merkers, maybe you're human beings, and you're flawed. You don't have everything worked out. The problem is there's too much politics. If everything was pure, it would be a lot different. Probably too much politics. Look, in Merkers, we all know. Let me ask you a very blunt question. If it was Merkers' brother, would they treat him the same way as they would treat someone who's not their brother? We know they wouldn't. So as soon as you hear that, you know that it's not really it's whatever's negated to you. Am I wrong? That's the problem. Everyone knows that. I understand, but once you hear that, then is it really fair?
So it's not MS.
It's not fair. Then it's not fair.
So they can't. So they it should be not even that they can't treat them. They can't be dealing with things that are negative.
Exactly, they have to recuse themselves. Exactly, but they don't. They say they say okay, we can do whatever we want. That's the problem. You're not going to respect someone like that. That's the problem. If you have a rav that changes opinion because he doesn't negate a dover, you're going to respect the rav. That's the problem. And also, they all between you and me, they also destroyed the covenant of Rabbanim. They didn't like a rav. Remember Mem Zayin, they never had to yell about it. So once you destroy the authority of a rav, it comes back to bite you. Then if I destroy the authority of a rav, that can't come and I'll say, hey, listen to me. They did that. They single-handedly destroyed authority of Rabbanim. I'll even say,
So why did Rabbanim go along with this? Like,
Rabbanim are weak. The Rabbanim don't have power.
so then just say I don't do these things. That's it.
But then they're pressured and they're used by these guys. It's a bahola. It's a chur. What can I tell you?
Our whole saying is based on Allah the Rabban. If you don't have,
Look, I may not agree with a rav, but you can't undermine the authority of that. If you destroy that,
that's the seder.
our children, our communities. You need to have authority, even if the rav is a jot. If you take away that, then what are you left? Exactly. But that's what happened in Mem Zayin, Mem Vav, Mem Zayin. Big mistakes were made by people in authority that didn't want to listen to Rabbanim, and they made it like the Rebbe darf nicht kein Rav, ich darf echt nicht kein Rav. Look, what happened when the Rebbe would not give Weinberg the dollars? Remember that Pasha? You know that Pasha? Weinberg said something berabim against the Rav. And the next time by Fabrengen, the Rebbe, he came for dollars for the women. He would always come. The Rebbe ignored him. But Rabbi, Mamish Mevaza Barabba. And then again, more than twice, and he realized that this is, so he got up on the Bimesh Shabbos, and he asked Mechila. And after that, the Rebbe gave him dollars. Not even getting, the Rebbe didn't ask, I want to hear your side. You Mevaza Arov, and that's it. You can't do that. You can't be Mevaza Arov.
Remember Weinberg from Tanya?
Yeah. There's a few stories like that. When they didn't give the Rav an Aliyah, Sadibris, they were playing politics, and they thought the Rebbe that doesn't, is not involved.
Well,
But
why did the one get? Why would the one care so much? Because people from America told them not to give.
you're very naive and very pure. I see. Once you get embroiled, when people cultivate you, and they work on you, they use you.
You're saying
The Rabbanim were used. The Rabbanim were used. They're not strong, and they were cultivated. Maybe they were also given. They were appointed by them. They gave them. It's like if I get you elected, so you're like beholden to me.
Why? Once I'm elected, though,
You not, but Anyway,
I'm saying I'm there for life.
I don't want to talk negative. People are people. There's a reason there's a called Sheikh Ya'avin Chacham. So clearly, as a Chacham can, everybody can be bought.
There's probably some people that avoid it because they don't want to deal with this.
I always have a joke for myself that there's a Medrash Anelim says that after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, all the Rabbanim with that are Yerushalayim, their seichel was taken away from them, and the ones with seichel are corrupt. Mervenik Raze. What do you think? It's a real pain. What can I tell you? I don't know. It's
The problem is, you're saying
But folk halacha.
their body are corrupt, so...
not all. I didn't say all. No, chas v'sham.
I think, you're just saying...
Corrupt is also levels of corrupt.
There's no change in the fact that
No,
you can't respect such a Rav. A Rav that's fighting to get a position, you have to respect. It's going in a circle. The Rabbis who should respect, you should educate a generation to respect their Rabbis. But they're the whole time they're fighting with each other. In each other.
But
So
on the other hand, you know that you have to
going in a
listen to the
circle.
bottom, so you just give mass, basically.
From my point of view, I stay away from Rabbanim, and that's it. You tell me. Even in Halacha it says this. This is my nenu in the Smaita Halavavis. When you lose a din Teda, one of the reasons for Pshara is because people can't deal with
With the loss.
once you lose a Rav, you pass it off. That's what many people do. Now there are the few Yiras Shamayim that will accept. Like the Rebbe brings a story with that you'll lose $5,000 for a tray for this, but if someone else wins, Teva Ben Adam.
Yeah, I wanted to take a tenant to Rabban.
It's based on trust.
Didn't want to go to the Rabban. Don't pick your Rav you want, the tenant. I said, you're free guy, you got a beer. Which Rav do you want to go to? We have an argument. He said, I don't trust Rabban for a pizza. I had to find, like the chef did.
Rabbi Heller called me once, Rabbi Heller.
To talk to him.
I knew Rabbi Heller from Morristown when he was a Rosh Hashiva, before he was a Rav. In Lamed Vav he came. Your grandfather was there, Shmuel. Yeah. So Rabbi Heller told me, I stayed friendly with him over the years. When he became a Rav in Crown Heights, he told me it was the biggest mistake. You know why? He says, I was by Din Teda, and two mashpiyim, who I both respect, fighting over $1,000, like chayis. He says, suddenly, everything I used to sit by the Fabrenans, $1,000, mitamol, it became like the story with the mice, the cat. That suddenly turned back into the chayis. The person losing respect for there's no Yiras Shamayim. It comes to $1.
Yeah, but everybody's like that. Let's be honest.
You said,